if there's no objection, we'll take Katie first, and then we'll jump into the two meteor items, if that's okay. Is there any objection? Hearing none.
What is the time frame?
How
How long
have,
does she have?
she has to get off.
I gotta jump off early myself.
What time do you have to get out, Karen?
Right after the Kingsland.
Right after the Kingsland. Okay. Well, let's see. I have 15 minutes for the discussion for Katie. Katie, I think we can keep to that 15 minutes. And I don't expect, I don't think we're actually going to need a full 30 minutes on or we can bump up Kingsland, actually, if nobody has an objection to that. I'm sorry to move the schedule around.
This is Ryan. I don't object.
Okay. Katie, can we do this in 15 minutes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Thank you. And
Okay.
no, it works well because it's very integrated with the Kingsland conversation. So if they're back to back, that would be great.
Okay. Katie, go.
Okay. I'm going to be sharing my screen essentially for visuals. But before I do, I just wanted to give context. I was inspired by the last meeting and the presentation that Willis gave, because the issues that are taking place on Kingsland that were discussed are very similar, as I brought up then, to the issues we've been having near under the Cay Bridge Park. And so with that, I just kind of wanted to share some photos, if I'm able to. Great. It's not going to let me share. Okay.
You should be able to share, Jerry, or
no, it's
Joanna?
because I'm on my browser.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not on Firefox. So, Lynn, are you on by any chance? My colleague Lynn Del Sol was on as well, and she was helping me prepare. At any rate, as I figure that out, if for those of you who are familiar with Under the Cay Bridge Park, it is a 7-acre open space that was opened in 2019 after several years of community conversations. It's a really unique project that combines state DOT with my organization, the North Brooklyn Parks Alliance. It was a, when I say community driven, there were a number of visioning sessions during a 2-year design period that included both in-person charrettes as well as in-person tours, as well as a community opening, at which time the framework was announced and shared with the community. And the reason I bring that up is because throughout that time, what we heard from the community was it was really important to have open space. They were very excited at the opportunity for 7 additional acres of open space, and that this was such a unique location, being under the Kosciuszko Bridge, that it also was a place to be activated through programs and events ranging from, let's say, musical concerts to recreation that you couldn't see in other spaces. It was a state project. And so we had wonderful support from our state leaders, Joe Lentil in particular at the time. And we were able to get it done and actually built in a, I don't want to say unprecedented, because I don't know if that's true, but it certainly seemed very fast in the middle of the pandemic. So we opened in June 2019. And all of that's kind of important context because, it's in a heavily industrial area. So alongside places like Kingsland Wildflowers or Gateway to Greenpoint, you have these ideas for new open spaces that are being placed in unusual locations. And you have, in this place in particular, because it's a destination and because we feel a mandate to program it heavily, we are attracting a number of people to this site. And so what we're seeing is a large, I'll just say battle between the public and the industrial activity that's happening down there. And so, Lynn, are you on yet? Are you able to? Okay, so it's important to show the photos because what we're seeing and what we've been requesting from City DOT is things that will allow us to attract large numbers of people there in a safe way. That's number one. And number two is to get sanitation there so that able to actually have clean streets. Because going to the first issue, last year we had, upwards of 1,000 people per event for special events. And then on a day-to-day basis, we have attracted a large number of folks using wheels. By that, I mean, we have kids on scooters, we have teenagers on skateboarders, we have droves of women on roller skates, we have BMX bikers. It's designed for those types of users. So they're not only walking to the site, but they're using these scooters, skateboards, bicycles to get there. And what's happening is that they're crossing the streets, and the streets are overrun with trucks. So visibility crossing the streets is very, very poor. We have abandoned flatbeds at the intersections of each of the park. We don't have any signs anywhere around the entire park except for one street in front of Waste Management. And what's happening with that is you have abandoned trucks. You have folks who are using their trucks for illegal dumping, or in some cases, they're just washing their vehicles at the steps, or some cases inside of the park vicinity, which sounds like, okay, they shouldn't be doing that. But what's happening is that these trucks are coming from heavily industrial areas that are potentially handling hazardous and toxic materials. And so in some cases, in between our park parcels, you have upwards of 8 to 12, and we know this because we've measured 8 to 12 inches of some sort of, I don't want to say dirt because I don't think it's dirt, some sort of material that is piling up because the streets haven't been cleaned and because the businesses surrounding the site are using the open spaces for cleaning, dumping, and essentially abandoning vehicles. Some of those vehicles have blown up and melted and have stayed there for weeks at a time. Some of those vehicles have been left there for a year and a half or more. Some of them leave flatbeds and then drive away, leaving the flatbeds there in the middle of the sidewalk in between the two walkways going in. So again, very little visibility. I have 2 small children. And so to get, on scooters, I've had my heart drop a number of times because they're scooting in one section and they want to cross the street to the other section and you can't see because there are flatbeds in the crosswalks. And before you have a chance to go around the trucks to see, another truck is coming this way. And so I think I heard Karen on the call. We have spoken to Karen. We don't want to interrupt the businesses in the surrounding area. We want to work with them, but at the same time, we are begging to have signage being placed around the park. What we've requested and what the local precinct has also put in a work order for, or a request for, is at least no parking at nighttime on Stewart Avenue. We also think it's very important on Gardner Avenue. This is between Cherry and Scott. This is one of the most egregious. Essentially, there are three public streets that intersect a 7-acre park. There is no signage on any of those streets. And so the streets are completely congested with nearly abandoned vehicles, which makes it difficult to cross in between Park B. And so what we are, again, requesting is signage, because we've been working with NYPD and there's no enforcement. And the reason that there's no enforcement is because there's no signs. They can't ticket because there are no signs. No one can tow because there's no ticket. And sanitation won't come because there's no street regulations, making, like I said, nearly a foot of waste. What I think is probably hazardous waste in the streets that we're walking over. I mean, we can't sweep it. It's so dense that it needs to be shoveled, but that's actually outside of our jurisdiction. But, in order to keep the public safe, we have to clean it. And so thank you, Rhonda. I'm glad you're joining. I'd love to understand how to move forward and make this place safe, because we have maybe, a few, I would say probably about 15,000 people visit last season. And this season, we're probably expecting upwards of 100,000 because of the level of programming we're going to be doing. And I want to make sure as we invite those people to the space, they will be safe. And I know the DOT commissioner at the time, Commissioner Gutman, was there last year. He said that they would act quickly. I know DOT was there surveying. I saw them there, but they were there actually when the park was closed because we were preparing for events. And so, Rhonda, I'd love to hear from you about how we can move forward.
Sure. So there's a lot I don't want to miss anything. So regarding a request for like no standing overnight, I could follow up on that if PD submitted a request for that. Do you know?
They submitted a request. They submitted a request for that last summer. So Rhonda,
Right.
I remember I ran into you in the park one
Yes,
day.
of course I do. Mhm.
It was because PD had just put that order in, but that was a year ago, and I haven't heard anything since.
Okay, well, I mean, do you know who specifically? Maybe you could have that person reach out to me directly.
It was the
Because
94th, so I think it was, Captain Fahey at the time, so Deputy Inspector Fahey. I don't know if she's on the call, but.
Okay, well, if whoever put it in specifically, if they could follow up with me so I could get the paper trail and find out what happened to that, I'm happy to do it. We definitely need a request from someone to make that happen. For like overnight regulations, you're talking about no standing or no parking, right?
I mean, our preference is no standing, but, I think like the PD had asked for no overnight, so at the very least, we could address the abandoned vehicles.
Well, I mean, abandoned vehicles could be addressed anyway because commercial vehicles aren't allowed to park anywhere for more than 3 hours at a time.
No, I
Unless they're
understand.
like actively loading and unloading. So those vehicles could be ticketed. They could be towed. You can't leave a car parked anywhere in the city for more than 7 days.
Of course,
it's illegal. But
as Deputy Fahey said last time with Kingsland, she doesn't have the capacity to have her staff sit there for 3 hours. And so without signs, she really can't enforce. I don't want to speak on behalf of the PD, but that's what she had said last time.
well, the one truck that I saw there that's been there for months, you don't have to sit there for 3 hours. You can just come back the next day and it's still there. But yeah, I mean, I think that I could, as long as I have a request to follow up on, there's a good chance I could get no standing overnight regulations. What hours are you thinking?
I mean, again, our preference is no standing at all on Stewart, Gardner, and Scott.
What hours?
No standing.
What hours?
24.
No standing anytime?
No standing anytime.
So you don't want people to be able to park there during the day?
No.
You don't want park goers to be able to park there?
I mean, on those particular streets, it has been a big problem. We're
Wait, I'm
talking
sorry,
about
it's Stewart, Gardner, and what was the third one?
Scott. in between Cherry and Stewart. Those are the three, it's 3 blocks. Stewart, Cherry, Gardner, Stewart, Gardner, and Scott.
You know what? I think what would be best is you should email me with this, okay? And then I could coach you to put the request in through our website, all right? So we know that can happen instead of talking about, we could move forward. I could get what you're asking for and the specific streets and the limits on those streets. But
Cool.
But just to be clear, if you're looking for no standing anytime, you don't want park goers to be able to park there.
Well, again, this is just 1 block in between the 3. So it's only the 1 block that intersects the park. So
Just to be
Yeah.
clear, it's Gardner between Cherry and Scott.
It's Gardner.
correct.
No, it's Gardner between Cherry and Thomas.
Oh, Gardner between Thomas.
The other street is actually unmapped. The nearest street would be Anthony.
Correct.
So it's
I'm sorry. We had a map, but I'm not able to share it, so I apologize.
Okay.
We had
So the unmapped, I can't really hear her, so you're gonna need to
all
send
that's
this to me.
on that block, traditionally or commonly, is basically 1 to 2 rigs. So what we have is 2 rigs parking on our cross streets. So that's Stewart, that's Gardner. Scott is truly not a parkable street, yet they do it anyway. Large cement trucks park there that are about 45 to 25 feet in length. These box trucks, these box rigs, are blocking all sight lines for several feet into the street. So for now, we think the exchange of our park goers who do not really come to this park with a car, they're mostly on foot or on bicycle. The exchange of their safety versus them showing up in a car, I will take that. So we would prefer no standing anytime, as is what's established on Waste Management Street of Thomas. All of Thomas has no parking or no standing anytime. And that's also to facilitate those box trucks and those trailers to actually drive on those streets and make those turns safely, because oftentimes they're sideswiping smaller parked vehicles or crashing into our fences or our light posts or many other objects that are in their way. So honestly, to facilitate both the businesses around us to have access of their drivers to drive there, we think it's beneficial to them. And for our park users who are traditionally not in a car, it's beneficial to them. The only few people who would suffer are the handful of workers in the area who do use it for small car parking. But there is honestly quite a bit of parking in that area for those people to find closer
Sure.
to
Or anyone that was like disabled would also not be able to park there.
I mean, we could always put,
But listen, since Eric wants to keep this moving along, again, I just want to reiterate, just if you can send me an email with the streets. I don't want this request to be coming from me. I want it to be coming from you. I need the paper trail, okay? So send me the locations, the street that's unmapped, we probably cannot sign. We're not going to sign.
That's
the unmapped
that's
street.
DOT. So that's state DOT, and state DOT is going to be clearing that street out as well. But Rhonda, so what's the timing? Because our programming starts Memorial Day weekend. So if we put in those orders now, can the signs be up in the next month?
That's not within my control. I certainly can promise that. I could not promise that, but let's get it started as soon as possible.
Okay, so I do have to move this along. So let's just say next steps are Katie or Lynn, or both of you will contact Rhonda with specific requests, as well as communications between, I almost said OSA, the Parks Alliance and the 9-4, and get those to Rhonda as well, please. And then we'll follow up over the month before the next board meeting.
But if you're looking for sanitation to clean, If you want cleaning regulations, right? You got to talk to sanitation about that, and that request has to come from them to us, and we can do
For
those signs.
almost a year and a half now. That's why we're coming to you all for assistance maybe in moving that request along.
Right. So that's fine.
So
So
send me that email tomorrow. If there was a chat, I would put my email address in the chat, but the chat isn't available, I think.
I can forward that to I think they have it.
I mean,
So
I think Katie has my email address, but
Katie, you're muted. Katie, you're muted.
I said, I've emailed Rhonda this before, so I have her email address, but thank you. And Eric, I just want to also say thank you for letting me go ahead of the agenda. I appreciate it.
No problem. Okay. All right, and we can follow up on this at the next transportation committee meeting, but hopefully we'll have some follow up that I can put in the report for the May report. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Closing that item and moving to back to item 1. Or would we rather do Kingsland Avenue? I'm sorry to.
did you just say Kingsland Avenue was going to be next?
Yeah, we can do Kingsland Avenue next if there's no objection. I'm sorry for the agency folks that are looking at an agenda thinking they're leaving, but yeah, if we could do Kingsland next, I think that would be best if there's no objection from the committee. All right, hearing none, let's do Kingsland Avenue. Preston?
Yes.
Or
Preston
Rhonda, do you
Johnson.
want to introduce Preston again, or however is best? Go ahead.
Sure. I'm Rhonda Messer from New York City Department of Transportation, Brooklyn Borough Commissioner's Office. I'm the liaison for this community board for quite some time. Preston Johnson is joining us today, and he's going to give a presentation on a proposed project that includes a bike lane and a pedestrian path. And so I'm just going to go ahead in the interest of keeping things moving along. I'm going to turn it over to Preston. Thank you, Preston.
Okay, thank you, Rhonda. Let me share this if possible. Okay, share. Just one moment. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, as Rhonda mentioned, my name is Preston Johnson. I'm project manager with the bike program at New York City Department of Transportation. And just following up on last month's presentation, talking about ways to improve Kingsland Avenue, we have a proposal that we'd like to share with you. So the project area, while last month a lot of the focus was north of Greenpoint Avenue, we want to, it's the goal of the bicycle program to ensure that we're creating a network of bike lanes that are usable. So we are actually proposing to extend this down to Meeker Avenue. This is coming in the context of some other planned projects on McGinnis Boulevard, on Meeker Avenue, and on Review Avenue, sort of surrounding the area. Background, as I mentioned, the Newtown Creek Nature Walk Phase 3 has recently opened, and that access is on Kingsland Avenue. And last month, we heard the interesting proposal from the Newtown Creek Alliance about adding bike connections, adding better pedestrian connections. And this also, however, it's a heavy industrial area. There's a truck route in between Norman and Greenpoint Avenue on Kingsland Avenue. So these are things that we need to balance. I hope that this proposal sort of meets some of those goals for you. We see about 4 different main issues in this area. As I was just saying, the industrial issues are really primary. I mean, I think the trucks and heavy vehicles, they're necessary to the operations of these industries, these businesses that are on Kingsland Avenue. But at the same time, they can pose some threats to pedestrians and people riding bikes, as we're seeing a growing number of those people going to the nature walk. And the current lack of street markings, I think, really kind of adds to those problems. Another problem that we heard about was the illegal truck storage on Kingsland Avenue, and it's causing a problem where it makes it difficult for people that have a need to come to the area, to park in the area. They're not able to get parking, and we hope that this project addresses that illegal truck storage and provides more parking for people that sort of deserve the parking there. Another thing we heard about was pedestrian access. As you can see in that top photograph, we heard a complaint that the lighting was inadequate. But I think what you might see is that you do have that light pole that's cut off and kind of blocking the sidewalk there. But even if with that light, it's the shade. That light is not getting to the sidewalk because you have this corridor of box trucks just blocking the light. And we hope that this design can kind of open up that area, adding more pedestrian space, also allowing that light to make it less of a forbidding kind of area for people walking. And that also you can see that sidewalk is just barely passable for somebody in a wheelchair or pushing a stroller, and so the design tries to address those types of limitations that the existing condition has. Another issue that we see is the lack of north-south bicycle connections. While there are some plans in the works, as I mentioned, this eastern part of Greenpoint really could use some more connectivity for these just different options for people riding. It's coming in context of a street that is kind of in the middle. Oh, this says Queens. That's terrible. I'm sorry. Coming in the middle of Brooklyn corridors. But at the same time, I think what you see is while vehicles on Kingsland are moving, I mean, it's only a block long, so you're not seeing a lot of speeding or anything, but you're seeing really heavy vehicles that really need to be spaced at a greater distance from people that don't have that kind of protection, those vulnerable street users like people walking, people on bikes. And if there were interactions or conflicts or crashes between those different modes, I mean, they're very likely to be very severe injuries. And so we want to minimize that to the greatest extent possible. And we have a good record. Our toolkit for this type of safety project of the protected bike lanes really has improved the safety of streets throughout the city. We see 15% drops in crashes and with injuries, and we see an even greater drop, 21%, in pedestrian injuries. This comes in context of the Green Wave Plan, where in the wake of a lot of fatal crashes of people on bikes and pedestrians, the city really committed to identifying the problems and then the solution, which would be more protected bicycle lanes. And so committing the city to building 30 miles of protected bicycle lanes each year. And while this, is admittedly a short segment, it goes towards that goal. And so these goals that I'm talking about are improving the pedestrian experience between Greenpoint Avenue and Newtown Creek Walk, both by expanding the pedestrian space and by shortening pedestrian crossing distances, developing the north-south bike connections, configuring Kingsland Avenue parking to optimize for passenger vehicles, and sort of making it more difficult for those illegal trucks to be stored there. You know, I mean, it's NYPD can't be everywhere every day, so enforcement is kind of a it's harder than actually redesigning the street in some ways. But at the same time, we want to maintain the motor vehicle circulation. We know that these are important businesses. They need to continue their operations. So what you're seeing here is a section on the widest part of Kingsland Avenue. It's 82 feet wide. Currently, it's separated by this Jersey barrier. There is two-way, I mean, there's no markings on the street, so it's kind of lawless. But the way it seems to operate typically is two-way traffic on this north side and eastbound traffic on that south side. What we're proposing is to remove that barrier and create an expanded pedestrian space on the south sidewalk. This is what we're proposing is painted flush pedestrian space, but in the future, this is something that could be built in concrete. And next to that would be a two-way bicycle lane with a buffer in between a angled parking. There's a travel lane next to the angled parking. You can see that it seems very wide, but it's a typical situation that you need a wider travel lane next to angled parking so that vehicles can get out of that parking space. And then on the north sidewalk, or on the north side of the street, we have a wide parking lane and a wide travel lane. We heard from the community that there is the need for vehicles to queue up as they wait to access the different operations on this north side of the street. And I think that we're providing extra space so that that can happen. On top is kind of what you see currently, and on bottom is a similar example where you have this angled parking, creating the protection for the two-way bike lane. In addition to what you see in that section with the pedestrian space, the bike lane, the parking, the traffic, and another lane of parking, we're also proposing to shorten these crossing distances by putting islands, adding crosswalks, curb extensions. Currently, you'll see that people actually park all the way there. You know, without the crosswalk, it becomes, you know, difficult for people to make that crossing because, you know, just people park wherever they can. And, you know, part of that reason is that there's not enough parking, and we're hopefully addressing that issue. Now on the part just north of Greenpoint Avenue, it's a little narrower. We're proposing, so currently there's parking on each side of the street, one lane of traffic in each way. What we're proposing is to remove the lane of parking on that west curb, but that's offset by the gains in parking that we get on the other part. So instead of using parking as the protection on this bike lane, what we're using is a Jersey barrier. And so trying to maintain this protected parking, but at the same time, because this is a narrow street, we don't have the ability to use the parked vehicles to do that. So on top is what you see currently, and on the bottom, it's sort of an example of what we're proposing. And a plan of that. On the right, you see Greenpoint Avenue. This is sort of tilted to the side. The north is over here. You have the protected lane with Jersey barriers, 2 lanes of traffic, parking on that east curb. And also on the other side of Greenpoint Avenue to Meeker Street, we have a more standard bike lane that we're proposing. We're not proposing a protected lane on that side. It's a narrower street. So basically what you're seeing here, it's just taking that extra width and putting a bike lane there, giving a dedicated space to people riding bikes, but at the same time not affecting the travel lane, not affecting the parking. So on top is what you see currently, and on the bottom is what we're proposing. One sort of oddity of Kingsland is where it really widens out at Meeker. What we are proposing is to create a little pedestrian space to shorten that crossing distance. At the same time, we need to accommodate turning vehicles coming from Meeker Avenue, but we're really shortening that crossing distance by, I'm not exactly sure what the numbers are, but I'm guessing, you know, close to 15, maybe 20 feet. And so really sort of improving that pedestrian experience where currently they're really exposed to the traffic. And so just to summarize, protected bike lanes are in our toolkit of kind of providing safety for all street users. We hope to create more bike connections, increase pedestrian safety, especially as we're walking to the Newtown Creek Nature Walk. And part of this comes in the context of preventing illegal truck parking, and all while trying to maintain the existing traffic capacity. So I would love to hear any questions and try to answer them.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Preston. I'm going to turn this discussion over to Karen and Willis. Karen, would you like to go first with any questions or comments?
Sure. Just on Kingsland, we're still, you know, proposing the parking. I would just ask, you know, you're saying that the lane is wide enough for parking, for queuing, and for a travel lane. I don't know how everyone else feels about that, but I would just say that we would need to monitor that, because I would just be afraid of, if there is queuing occurring and there's not enough space, that then they would be going in the opposite direction, you know, head on with trucks that are coming down.
Right. And just to be clear, we're not proposing to change any parking regulations on that north curb. So currently there are some places where there's not parking, and that can, you know, that can operate as queuing area as well. So just to be clear there.
Right, but that starts mid-block. So
Right.
it starts where the fire hydrant is, and then it goes to no standing, and then it goes to truck loading and unloading by Alaco. So I'm really talking about, you know, that last piece where you're allowing parking. I would just ask, like I said, that we monitor it, and if we need to remove parking, to remove parking for queuing. Then the other section, so I just want to be clear on Kingsland, I guess the north, you know, north of Greenpoint Avenue. So you're proposing to remove the parking that's across the street from the storage and put a Jersey barrier for the protected bike lane.
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to make sure, can you go over currently what the parking counts are now? Well, and omit obviously the illegal, I guess the illegal parking, but if you could go over the what is the gain, how many parking spaces, because obviously the parking across the street from the storage would be important for them. But if we're definitely making it up with the angled parking, then I feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little bit hard to say because, you know, obviously the amount of illegal truck storage is sort of variable. You know, it could, but when I've been out there, I have counted about 40 spaces available for parking passenger cars um, on this space, like on both sides of the Jersey barrier and also on this curb. And we're proposing about 60 spaces, while on this curb, you're losing about, I think it's 12 to 14 spaces. So typically, I think you're going to be seeing a gain. I mean, like I say, some of that's kind of, you know, can vary day by day depending on how many illegal trucks are parked out there. But we feel that this new parking arrangement is going to keep those illegal trucks from parking there, and so that will be space made available for passenger vehicles, for people who work here, people who are visiting the nature walk.
Karen?
Yeah, that was the main things. Thank you.
Karen, anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Willis, go.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you, Preston, for the presentation. I think we talked about this a little bit last week, but you know, my concern is the sort of spaces that are at the end of the parking field, and how currently people just park wherever. And I get that there's some lack of clarity, and this will help, but I also feel like due to the lax enforcement around anything in this area, people also take advantage of that. And so, you know, I think starting with where the sort of crossing is from one side of Kingsland to the other, having something in place there, whether it's planters, our organization, Newtown Creek Alliance, would be, you know, willing to talk about entering into a maintenance agreement for maintaining planters, or whether it's boulders or something else, because otherwise people are just going to be parking on that yellow space. And so any way we can deal with that would be great. And then the other thing is that to the left of this image, where the connection is to the nature walk, that is also often people park there. And again, because it's very unclear what's allowed and what's not, and there's no enforcement. And so the issue is that if people come out or walking out of the nature walk, and I see this like literally every day from our office, people walk out of the nature walk, and then if it's a wall of cars, you will just avoid it and go over to the north side of the street, and which is the area we want pedestrians to avoid because there's more truck traffic there serving Alaco and Broadway stages. So I would just, I guess on that second point, I think like having DOT needs to really coordinate with DEP, because that is an egress that they're no longer using, but that's their facility. And we need to have some clarity about like where the parking field ends and what the regulations are, so that people aren't just parking at the start of the bike lane. And then same for the pedestrian island. So those are like two specific thoughts about this area to make sure this actually functions.
No, those are great points. We will be having our engineers kind of like come to the site and look at those. So these 3 spaces could potentially be built up in concrete. I mean, I can't, until those engineers kind of like visit it, I can't make any promises at this point. But yeah, I mean, I think if it's not possible for them to be built in concrete, I think your proposal of having a maintenance agreement, kind of building up some having planters or whatever, that's a great idea. We also have a toolkit of different types of what we call flexible delineators, the flex posts, which, if they are successful in many locations. I understand, like in an area that has a history of sort of difficult enforcement, I can understand your concerns, but we can try to work together on that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, I feel like obliged to say that we all know the flex posts do not work. Greenpoint Avenue Bridge had whatever, hundreds of them installed. Very soon after, they're all completely gone. Also, I had a friend of mine who was killed on a protected bike path because a car ran over a plastic flex post. And there's in fact now a book that's out that talks about this entire incident and why it took so long for the city to actually install real protection for that bike path. So I just feel like an obligation to say that it's a non-starter, that the flex post is not going to do anything to protect anybody. So just throwing that out there. The other question I had was about the extended pedestrian space, and I think we're all very eager to see these improvements happen. But what's the process for creating that pedestrian space, not just as paint on the sidewalk, but as an actual extension of the sidewalk with street trees and other street features that would help improve this experience?
Yeah, I think that's probably more in the kind of the realm of capital projects.
Yeah.
It would be sort of kind of beyond the capacity of what our the crew that kind of does these kind of small islands that go along with our projects, what they could do this year. So I think that's what you're talking about, is kind of a capital project.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Is Gina Argento on the call? I thought I saw Gina log in. Gina Argento, yes, no? Or anybody from Broadway Stages? Anyone from Metro Fuel? Anyone from Alaco? Okay. Any other committee members have comments or questions?
City storage, I think, is on.
Oh, are they?
Yes, hi, this is Tanya. I'm sorry that I'm in and
Hi,
out. I
Tanya.
am driving in this terrible weather.
Yes, I hear it outside. Sorry. Okay.
So I got connected
Tanya,
in and out. I'm sorry.
Tanya, do you have any comments or questions?
No, overall we're on board. We like a lot of the changes, especially to get some of the traffic control going a little bit better. We're not sure 100% about the like the no standing and like how that affects like our clients directly, because being self-storage, we want to make sure that the customers can easily unload like as fast as possible. We don't want them obviously in the middle of the street or trying to cross the street with their boxes or crates. And while we do have an indoor loading area to some capacity, we're going into our peak season right now. We're entering it. So that's the only concern, that I'm not sure if I would want to do entirely no parking on the Kingsland Avenue side that's adjacent to our building.
Is this where you mean?
So I am driving, so I can't look.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just north of Greenpoint Avenue.
Yeah, north of
Yeah,
Greenpoint Avenue. They're on Greenpoint, on the corner of Greenpoint and Kingsland.
So I mean, we can also talk about different types of parking regulations that could keep the vehicles turning over there, to make sure that there is kind of available curb space for people.
Yeah.
And that could possibly be a solution to that concern.
Yeah, so that's our main concern. I mean, we like the additional parking. because we also have staff that drive in, they take public transportation, they drive in. So we like all the additional spaces, and for the staff and stuff, that's fine. But to get the customers to turn over like faster in and out, we would need some kind of parking, even if it's muni meter or time parking, whatever it is.
Okay. I can bring that to the appropriate unit at DOT to evaluate.
Thank you.
Anything else, Tanya? You're good?
All good.
Okay. So Preston will do follow up on possible, what would you call it? It's not really a loading zone, right? It's
yeah. I mean, I guess as shorthand, we could call it a loading zone, but just maybe.
but loading zone implies commercial, so it would have to
Right.
be loading zone. There is no.
Yeah, short kind of
Public.
short-term parking
Yeah.
or.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
we-
you know what? I'll leave that open. We'll take it for the record, and if you can get a reply within the next week or two, and just submit that through Rhonda or whatever to the board office.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay. Any other stakeholders on the call operating in this area? Okay. Committee, any questions or comments?
Hi, this is Kevin. I just had a question about the angled parking. Is there any way or any plan to put in concrete like stops? Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
That's the typical.
Oh, perfect,
condition.
perfect.
Yeah.
Good, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of want to ensure that the vehicles don't overhang so much that, I mean, you know, in the worst case scenario that they actually block the bike lane, but even in a more moderate scenario that they sort of prevent maintenance vehicles from either clearing the snow or sweeping the street. So yeah, that's the car stops are a tool towards that goal.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Board members, committee members.
Hey, Eric.
Yeah, well, let's go.
Well, I was just wondering if to talk more about. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to get too distracted from this north of Kingsland, which is how we sort of raise this, but to talk about the other bike paths and to sort of understand like DOT's like the rationale for putting. I appreciate the language about the value of protected bike lanes and the city's goal to install more and how they create safer streets for everybody. But, you know, was there an analysis of putting a protected bike path on Kingsland or Monitor south of Greenpoint Avenue? You know, I'm thinking specifically of, I mean, Kingsland is a very wide street, as we all know. And so, you know, was there a look at ways to make it a safer experience? And not to get too off topic, but because you did have a photo of it in the presentation at the very beginning, maybe you can go back and look at this real quick of Greenpoint Avenue. And there's a person on a scooter and a semi truck next to them. And there's stretch right there on the top. There's stretches of Greenpoint Avenue where there is space exactly right here, where there's space for a divider, a Jersey barrier. And this would obviously protect people like this guy and myself. I used to ride the same route down Greenpoint Avenue for like 7 years straight until I moved to a different part of the neighborhood. So, you know, this is like would help significantly for safety and also would contribute to the city's goals of implementing more separated bike paths. So 2 questions, like Greenpoint Avenue, why not have Jersey barriers in sections where it's viable, including up onto the bridge? And then also, was there analysis of specifically Kingsland, but also Monitor and having protected bike lanes?
Right. Well, as you note, the commissioner and the mayor have committed to protecting many bike lanes. that is an ongoing process. It is somewhat time-consuming process as we acquire and install each barrier. We'll be piloting a lot of new types, kind of like low-profile concrete and rubber barriers this summer. So which that could speed up the process. So I mean, I can't commit to this tonight, but it is something that is ongoing, and it's definitely on our radar. As far as the protected bike lanes south of Greenpoint Avenue, I mean, I think while that Kingsland is a little bit wider, Monitor really isn't wide enough. But also Kingsland is also a truck route north of Nassau, which causes extra complications as far as making sure that there's enough width for the trucks. So I mean, in the end, we are just doing the protected lane north of Greenpoint Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
So, Preston, is there any way that we could, even though it is a truck route, is there any way that we could look at a protected bike lane there?
I mean,
not in this round, obviously. But,
yeah.
But for next season.
Yeah, I mean, we can. If the community board's requesting it, we can take a look at it.
Okay. All right, maybe we'll put that on a future agenda. Okay, any other committee? Public? I can't see raised hands, so
Kevin Lachera.
Kevin
Raised
Lachera.
his hand,
Actually, yeah, keep the presentation up. Kevin, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess just a couple thoughts on this. One thing that obviously this would be a tremendous improvement to what exists there now, which is nothing. So that's great. Something that I do think this is a bit of a missed opportunity up along the treatment plant to create, more pedestrian space and more cycling space. That entire half of the street could be closed on Kingsland to be a plaza that links the Newtown Creek Nature Walk to Gateway to Greenpoint. You have travel lanes in and out. I understand there's concerns about queuing, but the angled parking that exists there now, I mean, it sounds like you're increasing the parking by about 20 spots.
Well, less than that because it's accommodating. We're also taking away spaces on around the corner.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, I just think that if we're building the infrastructure for folks to get to these spaces safely by walking and biking, we should lean in. So I just think that at the very least, the parking. I heard Willis's concern. I think it's a good one about the corners here and how close the parking comes up to the corners of this. I think you've got to build it out in concrete. And I think that if you were to take 2 or 3 or 4 parking spaces from the edge here and build it out so those sight lines are just as clear as can be, and parking is just as delineated as can be, I think that would be a great improvement. I also, is the angled parking, I'm just thinking about, I understand there's not the capital money right now for the build out of the pedestrian space. I think that's something that a lot of people would be eager to see, trees and planters and, in this space. I guess what I'm wondering is before this goes in the ground here, is the angled parking with the travel lane there on Kingsland, is that the basically maximum amount of space that can take up there? Does that make sense? Like, can the
It's-
angled parking come out any further than it does now, or is that the is that kind of, have you pushed the limit?
It's the minimum amount of space. We require about 18-foot stalls and I think 20. Well, if it was like 60-degree angle parking, I think that could possibly change. It might. I think it would reduce the amount of parking spaces. I'm not exactly sure what the standards are off the top of my head for, if it wasn't 90-degree angle parking. I think maybe you could shrink that distance a little bit, but also probably lose some parking spaces.
I just think it's something that if we're putting this in the ground and we're talking or thinking about more capital money as time goes on, it would be good to know what that breakdown would be. I mean, obviously you don't have it in front of you, but just to know, hey, it's the difference of 4 parking spaces, but it's the difference of an additional, couple feet of pedestrian space that we'll be pushing for or talking about to be this, kind of connective tissue between these 2 major open space projects in the neighborhood. If that would be possible to get back to the committee to get that information, just if it's 60 degrees versus 90 degrees, is it 8 foot of pedestrian space versus 10 foot of pedestrian space? If that is something that could easily be provided, I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah. I mean, also, we heard concerns earlier about ensuring that there's adequate space on that north curb as well. So, I mean, it's trying to balance those kind of 2 issues as well. I mean, I would love to add more pedestrian space. I would also love to add more, space to ensure that the queuing doesn't interrupt kind of the safe flow of traffic. But no, I hear your point. We can definitely take a look to see, kind of what we're talking about if we do.
Just what the difference is. Just what
sure.
the difference is, so that we
Sure.
know.
Sure.
I think that would be helpful. And I think looking at those corners is really important, both on the, kind of east and west side there. You build that out on the side, a space or 2 in, and you make it so that there's not the same blind spots. And I think you got to armor it up. Otherwise, exactly what Willis says, those delineators are not going to, classic delineators not going to do the trick over there. Let me I have one more thing. I'm sorry. Is there any work happening to the sidewalk in front of the Gateway site? That's on Kingsland between, like, it's Kingsland and between Greenpoint. It's like Kingsland between Greenpoint and Kingsland.
Like this sidewalk right here? Or?
Yes, that sidewalk. Is there any, because right now, I mean, obviously the park, the bike lane, you're adding a bike lane, but no pedestrian path there. Right?
Yeah, there really wasn't enough
very,
space.
Very difficult. That is a very, very, very difficult sidewalk.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I would have loved to add another 5 feet of pedestrian space, but there just really isn't the width to do that, as well as maintain all of these other sort of operations.
Okay. Yeah, I think one of my primary things is if we are going to be talking about future capital money for this space, to try to get as much pedestrian space set down as we can, and to know what our options are. I'm also concerned, what Willis was talking about. I think that you've really got to have protected lanes on Kingsland. I understand the limitations on Monitor, but I think especially because it's a truck route, you're building Sharrows on a truck route.
Well, they're not Sharrows.
Well, I mean, it's totally unprotected, and it is an uninterrupted, Kingsland at some of the stretches is so uninterrupted, and there is so much speeding along that way, that I think it's going to cause a major, I think it's a problem. I think the connectivity between Meeker is great. And I think the connectivity between this space is great. You're protecting the lanes under Meeker. You're protecting the lanes here. You're talking about protecting the lanes on McGinnis Boulevard. But, we're not going to protect folks as they're coming down Kingsland as these trucks are speeding towards the bridge. I think it's a huge problem. I don't know how, I don't think it's going to work in a way that is going to keep people safe. And I think that on Kingsland, you certainly have the space to lean into it. Monitor, I get it, but Kingsland, I don't know what the reasoning there would be not to do it, especially because you guys are looking for spaces to put Jersey barricades. Is there
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
is there
Kevin.
an answer to that, or is there?
I mean,
yeah.
We like I said before, we can look at that if that's something that the community board is asking for. I think there may be some trade-offs that we'd want to be able to report to the community board.
What would be the trade-offs, do you think?
I'm not in a position to say right now, but obviously there's parking. Obviously there's going to be a narrower way, a narrower space for trucks on a truck route. And I think those are the primary issues that I can see right now. But
what's the current width of Kingsland?
Okay, Kevin, we got to move on.
Well, Eric, if they're going to build this lane and they're not going to protect it, I think it's a problem. I think, they're presenting this plan, and I think that there's elements of the plan that look really good on the Newtown Creek side of things. But, if they're going to connect, they're connecting two protected lanes with an unprotected lane through a truck route. Kingsland's really wide there. Do we know the width of Kingsland there?
I think it's about 35 feet.
In total, it's 35 feet?
I don't have it at my fingertips right now, but I think it's 35 feet.
I'm sorry, which part of Kingsland are we talking about?
South of Greenpoint Avenue.
I think it's wider than 35 feet.
Okay, so by city storage? Or
no, across. So between the Broadway stages, between the old Exxon land and the truck lot.
okay, so you're talking about between Norman and Greenpoint Avenue?
Yeah.
So you want
Wagner from DOT. I just measured it. I can confirm it's 35 feet.
35.
okay, all right. So you're talking about where Broadway stages is and ExxonMobil between Norman Avenue and Greenpoint Avenue on Kingsland. That's where you're talking about, Kevin?
That is the stretch that I am most concerned about, because I think that, as you go further, as you go, south of Norman, it's residential or semi-residential, right? At least on one side of the street. And then when you go, then Kingsland, the rest of it down by McGolrick, it's residential. But in this stretch, when you have the cars turn off Norman up there, that's the truck lane. Trucks come down that area, Kingsland, like crazy. And I just think that if you're putting a bike lane there, you've got to protect it. You've got
So yeah, I would, unfortunately, Kevin, right now, I feel that Broadway Stages is not, or unless Gina is on the call, I think, unfortunately, I understand that DOT is showing us, the additional networks and connectors, but I think, we need to secure and lock down, this project and this redesign of Kingsland by the Newtown Creek plant. And I totally understand. I get you where we're going with this. But I need to know, are we are we supporting this project along with the additional bike lanes that are you're showing in this project? Or it's informational?
Are you asking DOT?
Yes, I'm asking DOT, sorry.
Yeah, we are proposing the everything that I've shown you from Meeker north.
I mean, what about these gates that you guys have put over in Times Square? Like the fences, the silver fences. It doesn't got to be Jersey barricades that are 3 feet wide. You can put the fences up like you have elsewhere. I just think that this is, you know, I'm sorry, but I just think that like this is it's not gonna be pretty.
Evan, we can take a greater look at it, but it's not as simple as just dropping Jersey barriers down the middle of the street and protecting the lane. There's a lot of things that we have to look at. That's why you don't frequently see 35 feet streets that have protected bike lanes on them. It's not as easy as you think it might be.
I'm
There's
aware
a lot
that
of driveways here. We need to get FDNY clearance. We need to make sure sanitation can access the space. So it's very complicated, but we can take a look at it and report back.
Okay, we have to move on. So, Karen, do you, or Willis, do we want to make a motion with recommendations at all?
Yeah, I mean, I hear what Kevin's saying, and I think that like a recommendation would be that we approve the plan and that we need DOT to come back to get into a further discussion specifically about the bike lane on Kingsland Avenue. Because I agree, because that's now my current commute down that long block. So I ride every single day, and the street is wide, the sidewalks are incredibly wide. Broadway Stages has a lot of activity, but it's only on one side of the street, and you know there's a lot of room for improvement. So I would personally suggest we approve the plan with the condition that the DOT comes back to have further discussion about a protected bike lane. I would say this: protected bike lanes that, because we talked about this as well, that connect to this network, Greenpoint Avenue and Kingsland Avenue. I don't know if it's like too much to ask, but
I mean, I was just sort of penciling out some numbers, and like I think you have like two options where you lose all the parking on one side of the street if you're talking about a barrier protected lane, which doesn't seem to work for the different types of operations you have there. Or I think you have a parking protected lane that is really too narrow for, I mean, you're talking about an 11-foot lane. I think it's a much narrower street than we typically put a parking protected lane on. And considering the different types of businesses that are on that stretch, I think there would be some issues.
Are there? Sorry.
Go ahead.
I mean,
Well,
because this is an issue in many other areas around in the IBZ as well, where you have like incredibly wide sidewalks that are not heavily trafficked, and I'll just say personally, as someone who walks and rides my bicycle and drives to the area, if I'm on my bicycle and there's a 10-foot sidewalk and no one's on it, I'm going to go on the sidewalk, even if it's illegal, because it's way safer. And the danger, so I'm just like, I don't know, sorry to rant. I guess the question is like, is DOT looking at ways to also like better treat the entire streetscape the sidewalk, these very large sidewalks, you know, and large streets to be more, I don't know, protective of all users? Is there like basically you could extend the sidewalk by like 4 feet and have a bike lane there, and then like I don't. It just seems like there's got to be something to do here because there's a lot of space.
Right. I mean, that's the type of project that would happen in a capital project
Sure.
where you're reconstructing the sidewalk and the curb, and I mean, it's potentially a valid solution, but you know, I can't say right at this point.
Okay, so we're gonna have to table that for now. Karen, any other recommendations? Or do you want to make a motion? Or Willis, do you want to make a motion? Karen?
Yeah, Willis, didn't you make a motion or no?
Yeah,
No.
I mean, I would make a motion to accept
Okay.
the plan as approved, you know, with, I mean, maybe it's not conditions, but, you know, also
Recommendations.
asking DOT to come back to discuss.
This is Maria, John. Before you make your motion, I'd like to make a comment.
Okay.
I think that because Gina Argento is not on this Zoom tonight, I think she should be apprised of the plan before and participate before we support this plan.
So real quick, there was a call last
Anybody
week.
else who is a stakeholder?
Okay, yeah, real quick. Everybody who was a stakeholder on this section was engaged. Tony, Gina, Monica from Broadway Stages were all on the call last week. Tanya and Avi from Self Storage, people from United Metro Fuel, and Mike Alaco from Alaco Storage. So they all saw the plan and, you know, weighed in on it, just as background.
Okay, that's fine. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'm fine. Okay.
Okay,
Cool.
but I just do want to add that they did support the bike lane, but now we're asking for something different.
Well, yeah, I think I'm just saying.
So I just want to, and that's why I mentioned it before, that when we're talking about Jersey barriers or physically protected or removing, that wasn't what was discussed prior. So Mary is correct that anything additional, Broadway Stages and the businesses along that stretch should be involved.
We haven't changed the
with that
plan since
discussion.
that meeting.
Yeah, Karen, I'm just saying that like DOT needs to commit to coming back and having further discussion about how to increase protected bike connections to this protected bike lane that we're in support of.
I mean, I agree even on Greenpoint Avenue, but I'm just saying that yes. And also, I guess, can we maybe first discuss additional recommendations if the committee has additional recommendations to add to the vote? Because I would add monitor, the parking on, what is it, the north side of Kingsland. If needed, remove additional parking for queuing. And then I would also recommend that this gets placed for a capital improvement project to make this permanent. The extension of the sidewalks, as well as you mentioned adding the trees, things like that, I think we should state now.
So Karen, go ahead. Make that so just restate that so I can have it clearly as a recommendation. So my notes say monitor, remove additional parking to allow for queuing for Alaco, but can you
Right on
polish that a
that,
little?
I believe it, yeah. Monitor monitor queuing and safety obstruction on Kingsland on the north side, and if needed, remove additional parking for queuing.
Got it.
The second thing is to request that DOT places this design for capital project, for future capital project, to make it permanent.
The sidewalk extension.
Okay, so I'm just going to restate it. Request DOT places this design for a future capital project to make the sidewalk extensions permanent. Yes? Hello?
Hey,
Yeah, sounds good.
didn't we also say exploring the angled parking? I feel like that was one of the, for more pedestrian space, or my.
Yes, you're correct, Ryan. Kevin recommended to look at, and Willis recommended to look at the corners.
Yeah, armoring the pedestrian spaces and angled parking. Yeah. If that's
Okay, can that, sorry, I'm dying over here. Can you restate that? Make that a clear statement, Ryan? Or Karen, whoever, or
I feel like
Willis?
it's, yeah, so like it, and explore further pedestrian safety measures like angled parking, armoring the corners, etc., and everything else in their toolkit.
Well, toolkit implies what they can do without a
Oh
capital
yeah.
project.
Sorry. I didn't mean. I was trying to be fancy with the word they used, but you're right. It implies a lot more. So scratch that.
Okay, so explore further pedestrian safety measures such as angled, well,
No, because what Kevin was asking for was to remove additional angled parking spaces and adding additional pedestrian space. Willis was asking for securing the corners so that vehicles don't go into the bike lane and park and have it more safer, I guess, for the pedestrians and cyclists. And Willis, you could correct me if I'm wrong.
So what?
That's it.
Okay. I need that stated clearly, though. I mean, I get it. So I'm just trying to.
But we had it before. We said it before.
Sorry.
Ryan, you used armored. What did you use before the word?
Armoring the pedestrian spaces. Yes, something like that.
At the corners.
At the corners, yes.
Armoring the pedestrian spaces at the corner of, it's got to be specific, Kingsland and Greenpoint. Was there another section, Willis?
By the Newtown Creek.
The east and west corners was the terms they were using. I'm trying to remember, like, so it matches like their project. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could say the entrance to the nature walk.
Yeah.
And the corner of Kingsland and Kingsland.
Okay. Kingsland. Okay, armoring the pedestrian spaces at the corner of Kingsland and Kingsland, as well as the entrance to the nature walk. Good? Oh, yes, no?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other recommendations?
Can we? I like the idea of putting in there somewhere that they continue to come back to improve it. I know we sort of just said that, but like we've really just started the basic protections, and I feel like we have an opportunity here to have industrial space and bike and pedestrian safety if we design it right and continue the conversations, because it really just takes like the truck slowing down, the bikers knowing sight lines, like everyone paying attention, and like real infrastructure change. And I feel like here is a good place, but the conversation has to be continual and growing. And I feel like if we could ask DOT to keep coming back to this somehow, to keep exploring how this mesh of industry and pedestrian space works. I don't know if it's semi-annual, something like that, but I feel like us asking for that. Sorry, I'm discombobulated, but you get what I'm saying.
All right. Well, okay. So that's in there already. I mean, I feel like if we approve the plan and
Yeah.
specifically, above north of Greenpoint Avenue, and then we can, it'll go in, and then we can see how it's working, and then have DOT back maybe in the fall or before the end of the year, early next year to discuss how it's working, and then go from there. Yes?
Sounds good.
Okay, good. All right, so if there are no other recommendations, I'm just going to read this back. So a motion made by Willis, approve the plan as presented with the following recommendations: that DOT return for discussion on protected bike lanes on Kingsland. Protected bike lanes on Kingsland from Meeker to Greenpoint Avenue and other
Well, you could just take the connecting roads. I mean, the other one is Greenpoint Avenue.
Okay, so let's just say DOT returns for discussion on protected lanes. What did you just say, Willis?
On the connecting roadways or whatever.
Connecting
Network.
Connecting bike network. Thank you.
Bike network. Okay. Monitor queuing and safety on Monitor Street. Queuing and safety obstructions on north side, and if needed, remove additional parking to allow for queuing for Alaco. Request DOT places this design for a future capital project to make the sidewalk extensions permanent, and armoring the pedestrian spaces at the corner of Kingsland and Kingsland, as well as the entrance to the Nature Walk. Any other recommendations? Is there a second?
Second, Karen.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Okay. So, sorry, 1 second. Okay. All right. So Preston, Craig, thank you. Thank you for this. I'll be in touch with Rhonda for follow up on the items that were brought up during this discussion. And
Eric?
Yes.
Yeah, before you just say goodbye to Preston, I think Craig had to go because he has a newborn at home. But so my understanding is that we're going to be asked to make this presentation again at the next full board meeting. I just haven't officially heard from the executive committee the ruling on that yet, right? But that's
right.
what
I believe the executive committee is next week. Jerry, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So yes, Rhonda, in answer to your question, we would like to have this presented to the full board out of order. Usually it goes to the board first and then to the committee, but we're doing this in reverse just because we would like to see this done this summer.
Right. So the hope is that your recommendation, then the full board will vote on it and hopefully go along with your recommendation, right?
Correct. And then, since Rhonda, I'm sure you're writing all these recommendations down, and Preston is taking notes as well, because he's already mentioned stuff that's been open in the discussion, that it could be tweaked if necessary to incorporate some of these recommendations by the May meeting.
Well, I think that you are going to need to follow up because everything that's said, I mean, in your motion, yes, but everything that's said isn't automatically.
Right.
You
No,
know
I
what I
understand.
mean?
I understand.
Okay.
I'll be in touch with you and Preston about follow up on those couple of questions.
Great. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Preston, for joining me here.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay.
you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. All
Gotta
right.
go. I'm sorry.
Bye, Karen. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Preston, you can go. I'll be staying though for other DOT issues. Thank you so much.
Okay. Sure. Good night.
Okay. Great. And Dan, thanks for getting that measurement on Kingsland on the fly. Okay, we will do item number 1, review of pedestrian safety improvements, the intersections of Broadway, Flushing, and Graham Avenues. I think it's Lauren Martin and Dan Wagner. Rhonda, if you want to start or go.
Hi. So Lauren is unavailable tonight. She's on an airplane going somewhere. So I will be doing the presentation tonight.
All right.
I guess I will just share the screen. So welcome. My name is Dan Wagner. I am the Assistant Director for the SIP program within the pedestrian unit of the NYC DOT. And tonight's presentation is about the intersection of Broadway at Graham and at Flushing Avenues. Some quick background on where
And
we're
Dan,
talking about.
what is SIP for the
street improvement projects? It's
Thank
DOT
you.
speak for
Got you. Okay.
in-house projects like Preston was just talking about.
Got it.
So the project here is highlighted in red at this intersection below the elevated and Flushing and Graham. This is a request from the community. This is also a request from NYPD. This is also something that the DOT would have loved to have identified earlier if we had noticed it. The area is within the bid, the Graham Avenue bid, so we have been working with them a little bit, and it is also at 3 major vehicular corridors, which has been a challenge in the design. Flushing and Broadway are both truck routes. Heard a lot about truck routes in the last presentation. And there are it's a multimodal hub. You've got the J train and the M train, and they've also got a bunch of buses that all go through the intersection. And then south of the intersection is the Woodhull Hospital. So what we find is that there's a lot of activity and action going on at this location. In 2014 and then again in 2021, this site had fatalities, pedestrian fatalities, which is unfortunate. And sometimes fatalities are more preventable versus less preventable. And we believe that the one in 2021 is definitely could have been prevented if we had done this street proposal beforehand. So I want to show you some of that. The existing conditions is that the actual intersection, this is getting into the weeds of DOT a little bit, but the actual intersection of Broadway and Flushing is a signalized, controlled, normal intersection in terms of control. But Graham Avenue, the intersection of Broadway and Graham, is not controlled. That basically means that vehicles turning onto Graham from Broadway must yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk. And that sounds pretty standard and normal. But what we found is that due to the unique geometric layout of this intersection, it can be a little misleading. And a vehicle driving east on Flushing and turning left onto Graham would see the signal at Broadway. They would see the signal, they would think they have the green light, and then they would start turning. And that would mean that they're now approaching Graham Avenue as a head-on, which is not what DOT prefers in the best kind of street design, and so it creates a conflict, as you can see in the graphic on the bottom left. This red truck, if you drive straight, he's going to drive straight into the probably, I'm guessing it's a USPS worker, and so it creates a conflict, and that is something that we think we can fix in street design. Additionally, the actual width, the curb to triangular island width, is wide enough that you can, as you can see in the photo, two vehicles can drive through it at the same time, especially if somebody's driving a little aggressively. They might want to floor it and go around the other guy. And so I don't think you need me to explain why this is a dangerous condition. But if you do, let me know. We also found, as was evidenced in the 2014 issue, pedestrian desire lines for crossing this intersection are often outside of the marked crosswalks. And, that's partly because of the location of the subway stairs. The green arrow on the right is pointing to where the subway stair meets the sidewalk. And if somebody's trying to go southeast on Broadway, they're just as likely to walk straight across Flushing Avenue as they are to walk down towards the intersection and do it more safely. And if you stand at the intersection of Graham and Broadway, you'll notice lots and lots of pedestrians, just as you can see in the picture, just walking sort of all over the place, and it's not as aware to the drivers of what's going on. So in our toolkit, I'm going to fly through this because I think you've already heard about toolkits tonight, but this is an in-house project, so these are some of our in-house tools that we have, but not capital projects, that kind of stuff, the bigger, more expensive stuff. So the proposed design is what you are seeing on the screen, and I will go through each piece one by one. So the first thing we would do is we would identify that in the existing condition, there's there's the triangular island at Graham that I've kind of glossed over, but there's actually because of that triangular island, it creates two slip lanes, one on the south and one on the north of the triangle. So I'm going to refer to those that way. So on the north slip lane for Graham and Broadway, we would actually widen this a little bit. We would remove the existing triangle. There's a column in that triangle. We can't remove the column, but we can remove the triangle around it and then reshape the concrete around that column. And by widening this northern slip, we can close the southern slip. And so therefore, traffic who is driving, like we were talking about before, Flushing to Graham, they're now no longer going to be able to drive straight, which would help delineate proper turning movements and make the drivers more aware of the pedestrians who are crossing the street there. We could also reconfigure call it the northwest corner of Flushing and Broadway. It doesn't meet DOT standards in terms of the way we would normally do a radius at an intersection. We would like to clean that up a little bit. We find that there's pedestrians are standing in the roadway at this location awfully a lot because they know that traffic isn't going to be here. So we would just like to formalize that and make it quite a bit safer. And then finally, we would flare the crosswalks that two of the crosswalks are already flared. It's the northern and eastern crosswalks of this intersection. We would flare those to accommodate the pedestrian desire lines that we're seeing, which will help drivers understand that they are in a crosswalk and hopefully drive a little more cautiously. Finally, lastly, the bus stop that exists today at the intersection of Graham and Broadway would be relocated to just before the intersection at Flushing and Broadway. This would consolidate bus stops, and as it says on the screen, this is what DOT and the MTA, after quite a bit of back and forth, have determined is the best proposal for this intersection. Here's a photo of the intersection, and this is our rendering suggesting what we would envision it to look like when we're done. This rendering has some planters and some hoop racks for bicycles on the on the actual construction of the pedestrian space. We are currently working with the Graham Avenue bid to finalize this, but this is just a suggestion. And again, this proposal, it creates shorter, safer crossing distances, which is always better for pedestrians. It also widens the crossing to the subway stairs. I went over that. It improves accessibility. It makes it better for people with disabilities, and it clarifies the vehicular movements. And I think that one's the big one for something like this. It's really a lot of the issues at this location have to do with pedestrians not sure what the vehicle is going to do, or the vehicle not sure what the pedestrian is going to do. And so a project like this really cuts down on a lot of that confusion. And it really identifies, hey, if I'm in this crosswalk, this driver is going to know that I'm here, and they have to wait for me. They can't try and go around me and maybe go a little too fast. That is me doing this on the quick side. I can do it again slowly if you want, but I think that there are probably some questions, and we'll get into the details with your questions.
Thank you, Dan. So just off the top of my head, I like this proposal, but I've seen so many near misses at this intersection, and I'm on it quite a bit. And I think having that built out plaza, closing off that slip is a great solution. Will there be signage put on that pillar, or something to alert motorists when they're making that new right turn, assuming that after your discussions with the bid, that's the way it's going to look? What's going to go in there to alert motorists besides the new pattern, just to make them alert? And that's really my only concern with that.
Yeah, we'll definitely have signs, especially the signs that have the yellow, it says NEW underneath it, like we call it a new rider.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That'll be up for 60 days after implementation, minimum 60 days. So we'll put those up. I don't have a sign plan developed. I usually let the engineers design it to their, they have all the standard specifications, but signs are definitely a part of this proposal. I didn't spend a lot of time with them because, I don't have it. I try to let the experts do their work on it.
And maybe it's just the way the images look, but it does look, and maybe you said this, and if I missed it, I'm sorry, that new crossing actually looks wider, and is that correct?
Talk about here?
Yeah.
Let's go to a plan. That's gonna be a little more. It's the truth is that it is going to be. It's going to be what should be there now. I don't know what the existing width of that crosswalk is, but the New York City standard for crosswalks is building line to 2 feet from the curb. So the Bariqua College building line is here. That'll give us where this edge is, and then we'll go to the curb and then go off 2 feet. So that is what it should be now. I can't say if it is or not, but that's what the proposal will be.
Okay, and I see your note that everything's going through MTA, so buses will be able to make that turn radius is fine. Great. Okay.
Yes, we have confirmed that with them multiple times. They are on board with this proposal.
Got it. Okay. That's all for me. Committee?
What's I want to, well, thank you. It's a great plan. I bike through this intersection, and it's can be chaotic, and it really takes in, it really feels like you studied it. I'm curious what the timeline is, because it's great.
With a positive result from this meeting, we are actually expecting to begin work in maybe as soon as June.
Right on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee members? Public for a 30-second comment. Just because we're running out of time here. No? Okay. Anybody
want to? My hand is up, Eric. My hand is up.
Oh, I can't see. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Dan. This is great. This is a great plan. And closing that slip lane. I mean, we've been looking at slip lanes all over the neighborhood like this that cause so much chaos and difficulty for folks. So, kudos. This is really great. I guess two quick questions. One is we had spoken with Woodhull Hospital a ways back about some of these intersections, some of these areas. So I don't know if you've had any conversations with them. Dr. Fishkin, particularly, has done a lot of their bike, like kind of public capacity work, and they had a lot of great ideas and thoughts that might help to inform the final plan. We had spoken with them a ways back, and one of the main things they brought up was, I mean, they didn't call it daylighting, but cars parking way too close to the corners, and lack of any sort of bike parking, any type of secure or sufficient bike parking for the area, for the amount of folks that were coming to the hospital. That was what we had discussed back, I think it was June of last year. Myself and a couple of other folks that were interested in this area down here. Closing that slip lane was one thing that we had talked about, so it's really great to see it. But I just was wondering if all these intersections currently in this new plan are, I see some, but if all the intersections are daylit and open like that, and also I know you said a couple of hoop bike parking spots in the plaza, but if there's any further bike parking that was explored around there, particularly in the roadbed.
So yeah, we're still working out the details. We want to be a good partner with the bid for this space because they are going to likely be our partner to maintain it and keep it sort of from becoming a less than desirable place. So if we can put in more hoop racks, like are shown here, suggested here, but it's a conversation between what the bid thinks is going to be. I want to be a good partner here. Like what do you guys want? Like tell us, but I'll tell him, I'll tell the bid when we talk to him that community board was recommending more bike parking for this area. There is currently some bike parking. You can see it in the picture actually right here. There is bike parking on the far side of the street as well. We were not exploring more locations for bike parking, but that doesn't mean we can't. We were focused so much on the pedestrian and traffic reconfiguration that, you can see there's a hoop on the very bottom of the picture as well. U-Rack, I think that one's called, and so there's plenty of space, there's plenty of opportunities. The kind of thing that once this is done, we'd like to make sure that we check where the curbs are, make sure that traffic is operating the way we want, and then that kind of thing we can come back to easily and continue to tinker.
And what about daylighting? I apologize. What about daylighting for the corners? I know obviously in the initial thing that you had showed, there's some cars kind of parked up close to the corner there, not in this instance, but I know that's just kind of a rough.
Yeah, I'm not sure where you're talking about. Actually, do you talk about
in the bird's eye view layout map? Yeah. Yep.
Oh, you mean like this one?
Yeah. So like you have at Broadway and Flushing at the triangle corner. I mean,
right. So this, you can see my cursor, right?
Yeah, to the left. To the left.
Yeah.
Where it says Broadway below the W. Like I know that might not be, but I'm wondering if there's any type of like build outs that you guys are thinking about in those spaces, because those are going to be busy crosswalks, obviously, because you know that because you're flaring them out. But the pedestrian traffic down there is tremendous.
Yeah, this is one of the more stunning levels of pedestrian volumes that I've seen.
Yeah.
And it's not part of this plan. If you want to request to daylight that spot, that's easy enough to incorporate. This is a signalized intersection, so there are places where I like daylighting everywhere, but there are places where daylighting is more effective and less effective. But I would say that this isn't as necessary just because of the signal there, that anybody who's turning right is going to be yielding to these pedestrians well, maybe it doesn't make sense.
I think
sure, if you want to put that request in, we would be happy to take a look at it.
I think the more space you're making for safety for pedestrians in this area, especially with the level of volume and the fact that you're doing so much amazing, so many amazing improvements, I think the daylighting would be, wherever possible to add daylighting would be a great improvement. And then also, I'd be happy to send along, Dan, or I could send it to Eric, the email and contact information for the folks at Woodhull that we spoke to, who had a lot of great ideas as you guys are finalizing stuff.
We had a contact, but they didn't respond. Did they, Rhonda?
Jessica Orocho, maybe?
Yeah. So I'm sorry. So Woodhull Hospital is actually not in Community Board 1. And my coworker, Leroy Branch, is the liaison for Community Board 1. I thought he was involved in the notification to Woodhull Hospital, but I think that for like additional bike racks in the direct vicinity of the hospital, it would probably be most effective for the hospital to engage with their liaison directly. It doesn't seem like it would be a request that would come from Community Board 1, is all I'm saying. Or you could put that request in yourself, Kevin, through the web form.
Yeah,
Anyone
imagine
could
that it's
really
more-
request additional bike parking anywhere, and if it meets the citing criteria, we would definitely consider doing it.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say, and I didn't say it very clearly. The bike parking request doesn't need to be associated with the street improvement project like this. Like that's a different sort of
Right, it's
an easier
ongoing and
lift.
completely
Yeah.
separate.
Yeah, these are sort of one time we come in, we do this big lift, and the bike parking thing can come and go.
Yeah, the primary things, like I said, you
That's-
spoke
we
with me a year
gotta-
ago. Those
Thanks,
are the two
Kevin.
things.
We
All right.
got to move on. Any other comments from the public?
Eric, as an FYI,
Yeah.
while Woodhull is not in our district, we sent them the proposed design. They did not reply.
Got it. Thank you, Jerry.
Right, as did we.
Eric, this is Kevin. I have a comment, or actually more of a question. Would it be in scope to just make a comment about the lighting in the area? I know that like my bike, for example, was stolen in this area, and I think that like some lighting improvements might also help in this pedestrian plaza here. But let me know if that's out of scope for this improvement.
I can actually answer that. We've already had these conversations. It's not in this proposal because they hadn't finished yet, but the conversation was, do you see this? There's a light pole right here that's already lighting basically the plaza. Currently it's a roadway. The question was, do we need to move that or not? And I'm pushing to not move it and then add additional lighting, I think, over here. I'm not sure, that hasn't been decided yet. Currently our lighting contract is in limbo, so we have to wait for that to be re-signed before we can come up with it. But if you could put it in your, if you have a letter of support or recommendation to look at lighting, that would be something that I think we could look at.
Can you add an additional arm off that post?
Well, currently the arm is going in the right direction, so I don't think we need to touch it.
Or maybe one going off in the direction down Graham. We'll add additional lighting to the
towards the Linksys.
Yeah,
we can.
Easy enough to do.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know anything about lighting, so I can't answer yes or no. But I can definitely put that in an email to the lighting folks.
And on the west side of the crosswalk too, no?
I don't think they would put one on each side. I think that's
Okay.
a little too much. But if we could put one over here, so that way the two of them are coming together.
Although that is a dark corner because of the train.
Yeah, I think it's very feasible to, I would like more lighting.
All right, so we can make that a recommendation. Anything else, Kevin?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other committee? Okay, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to support this proposal, but with 3 caveats that DOT take a look into adding additional lighting, additional bike parking, and then considering daylighting whenever possible. Those would be the 3 recommendations I have, in addition to supporting the proposal.
So support as presented.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, the chair was pretty emphatic that there's no vote of the board required on this item. So, but you could certainly entertain a vote on
just for a letter
additional
of support.
modifications.
Yeah, a letter of support. Mm-hmm.
And I will say that we always welcome a letter of support, whether we require it or not.
We didn't require a vote, but certainly
Right.
a letter of support is always appreciated.
Thanks for that clarification, Jerry. Yes. Okay, so letter of support for the presentation with the following. We'll do recommendations again.
Additional lighting, additional bike parking, and daylighting wherever possible. Those were my
Got
three
it.
recs.
Any other recommendations, committee? Is there a second?
Sure, I'll second it. It's Paul.
Well,
Yeah.
Paul? Okay.
Yeah.
Paul and Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I vote in favor, sorry.
Yeah, I'm in favor too. Couldn't get my thing off.
Okay. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Okay. Dan, thank you very much. I really think this is going to save lives. I've puzzled over this intersection for years, and I'm really happy to see these improvements coming through.
Thank
Okay.
you, Dan, for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
Alrighty, moving right along. Okay, so are up to a discussion on the district needs statement. Jerry sent around the process. Oh, I reached out to Jerry to ask him to just we could indulge him to just give a little insight onto the process, but Gina has joined us. I think Gina is still on the call.
Still here. Yeah,
Yes,
that's,
there she is.
you know,
Thank you.
oh, you're welcome. I actually, do you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good, because I've had problems with my computer. I worked on a presentation, and I'm thinking that it's going to be a little longer because you finish at 9, right? Only because
yeah.
I think it's important to
go ahead, Gina. No. Because here's what I'd like to do, and I've said this to Ryan a little bit, and I think I've said it in the committee meetings before, is that in order to do a proper district needs statement where transportation is concerned, I would like to do this over the course of a few meetings, so that we're not trying to do everything at once, which is crazy. So really the purpose of this, and I really want to thank Ryan for pushing this to make it happen, is to, get, and Gina, I'm so glad that you came to just go ahead and give your presentation.
No, that's the thinking to do.
Yeah, that'll give the committee a good idea of what is and what is not possible within the district confines of the district needs statement and how the city responds to it. And I will give you the floor.
Okay, let me see if I can share. If not, I have to read it. Let me just see.
And Jerry, if you'll just indulge us, I don't expect to go past maybe 9:15. So
Yeah, no worries. You still have to get to that new business item.
What's that?
You still have that new business item.
Yes, I know.
Because I know you have people on the call for that.
I'm aware. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Gina, go ahead.
I'm not good at the screen sharing here. I'm going to read it, and I'm going to just get involved in a discussion. Let me just review what, you have the PowerPoint that was sent to everybody, right?
Yes. Did folks take a look at that that PowerPoint that went? It's a 3-page PowerPoint.
Okay.
Okay, well,
we begin.
You have it in your inbox. I'm going to forward it again right now. I'm just going to reply to it so like folks could, but it was sent to the committee Monday, I believe. So
I agree with you. This is the beginning of a discussion, so we can work. I mean, my thinking is for the budget committee to work with all committees. There's a lot of work that we need to begin. So what we pretty much say, the community board participation in the budget process. Under the city charter, community boards are given a broad range of responsibilities for advising the city about local budget needs and priorities. The statement of this is the supporting informed planning and budgeting decisions. Statement of community district needs describes the needs of the district and recommendation for programs, projects, or activities to meet those needs, plus community board budget requests, which includes, and this is the important part, we're given 40 capital budget request items and 25 expense budget request items. And what happens is those items are prioritized so that later I will show you the statements so we can move on. Okay. Top three priorities. Oh, let me go down. Yeah. We have 3 priorities. We identify 3 pressing issues. Most important by policy area and by budget request. And for our community board 1, we have the affordable housing. We have parks and open space. We have Greenpoint and Williamsburg communities are growing in population and new businesses, waterfront development. There's a tremendous increased need enhanced for public safety. Our streets are overburdened with traffic, and we seek relief from the constant wear and tear in our roadways. And priority is the maintenance of the infrastructure, street resurfacing, street light repairs. And this is included in the statement of our top priorities. But also included in that statement are the other community needs priorities that address youth and senior services, mental health services, educational services, funding for library operations, sanitation services, and as well as the educational services. Okay. And I did highlight in the report, and I think this is very important, that based on the census, the Brooklyn population has increased by 9.2, and it's now the 4th largest city. Williamsburg and Greenpoint have experienced the greatest increase in population, and this huge increase in population should be in proportionate to an increase in funding. And I also would question why we have such limited number of items that we are given. I mean, last year we had 28. This year I think we were given 40. So of all these needs, we're only given like 28 items for the capital budget and 25 for the expense budget. Here is the timeline that I broke up. I outlined here. Preliminary budget is released in January with the preliminary budget documents.
So Gina, just to interrupt you for a second. So I just forwarded that the presentation to everybody again. So if I'm looking at it myself right now. So if anybody on the committee wants to look at it.
Oh, good.
Go ahead. Sorry. Thank you.
I was going to put it on the screen share.
Eric, I didn't, sorry to interrupt, I didn't get the attachment in what you forwarded. Just, I don't know if others are having that problem, but I'll see what was sent by.
All right, let me do it again. Let me do it again. Maybe I forgot to include it, but I did reply all, so usually it comes through. Go ahead.
This here. Crochet message. I just don't understand whiteboard. File. Share file. Window. I don't know. I'm. This is like not being able. I would love to be able to share it, but okay. Anyway, the timeline is the preliminary budget register is released in January with other preliminary budget documents. Agency responses are published in February of 2022. The statement on the preliminary budget are called letters of comments, are charter required, and they reflect the budget's reaction to the responses received mostly from the agencies in the fiscal year 2023. This statement helps both the borough president, council members decide in June on local budgeting and provides the Office of Management and Budget Analyst to review the statements on behalf of the mayor for the upcoming executive budget. In April, the executive budget is released, and we received the Office of Management budget response. The Capital Budget Committee reviews and discusses the Office of Management budget response, and we will be having a May 17th meeting that everybody is invited. June is adopted, budget is released, the borough budget consultation meeting in September. They have borough consultation meetings that I want to share this year with everybody. Marie allowed me, Marie was very helpful last year, and she included me in the budget consultation meetings that were online, and there were about 20 of them, but they were between 20 to 30 minutes, and I think they were very valuable in terms of attending, and I can share that with the committees this coming year. June adopted budget is released, borough budget consultation meetings in September. They provide meeting notes, and then the executive register contains the same broad requests and priorities. Office of Management budget updates the response. Since the executive budget is the mayor's budget, a final register is published after the budget is adopted. The adopted register contains response that reflects the changes made to the executive budget by the city council. And in November, the statement of district needs for this fiscal year 2024 is presented to the full board for a vote and is submitted. Now, prioritizing district needs. We were given 1 to 28, which is the budget, capital budget priorities, which covers for the capital budget, construction, construction programs, reconstruction of streets, sewers, parks, and buildings. Expense budget priority has 25 request items, again, prioritized from 1 to 25. And this covers all day services such as salaries and operations, supplies. Okay. In November of 2021, the Office of Management and Budget asked that the statements of the community district needs be organized by agencies, which is what I did. And if everybody has, and everybody will, if you go into the community board website, you will see the statement for the fiscal year 2023 that was approved in November of 2021. And it would be good to work with it because it's organized by agencies. It has an explanation and it will highlight the budget requests. For example, the capital budget priority item 13 through 20 is a request for reconstruction of streets. There's a description of the streets with an explanation and designated agency, which is the Transportation Department. And we will review to see if this request was funded or not. And then what will we do if they did not fund it? Because they could say we denied it, and we will say, well, no, we don't agree. But it's important to look through the statement. I have to say, I put a lot of work in the sections on agency, explanation, and priority request. Next. Okay, this is the important part, and this is the part where this year I want to work more with the committees and improve communication. Okay, so written comments were received, and we received a lot of them from the community board members, from the public, and also comments were received at the public hearings. Also last year I did, some committees were involved, other committees not as much. I reached out to the educational committee. I believe this year we should have all committees involved. And we participated in the review of the agency responses, the written comments, and we discussed the changes needed to be made. And if we needed to change the priorities, and only 3 very minor changes were made. And it continued, the district needs report continued similar to the prior reports. And with Marie, who was very helpful, I was able really to go back and review reports going back to 2012. And a lot of other documents that she provided. The statements on district needs and letters of comments is also sent, and it was sent in March. And there's agency response to those comments. Now, website provides tools that are very valuable, and I will share them, and you might be very familiar with them. But however, we have the citywide Statement of Needs, SON, for the fiscal year 2023. We have the Register of Community Board requests for fiscal year 2023 for the preliminary budget. We have the Office of Management budget response. We have the district, community district profiles, and the community district sites. And I found, looking through all of them, that Office of Management budget response was very helpful and valuable because it did respond and gave very good response to the fiscal year 2023 statement of district needs. So that's what we're working with here. I do want to say that this was my first year, but I did have the help of former chairpersons, and Delty is my co-chairperson, and she's been very helpful, and so has Marie. But as I said, my goal is really to work with the committees and begin to see how we can move forward and starting now and working on the district needs. And that's my presentation. I rushed through it, but there it is. Any comments? The time is 8:45. Oh, I mean, I think
Not bad.
That was an amazing overview of the process.
Oh,
Like,
thank you. I rushed through it a little bit because I was worried about the time, but thank you.
No, Gina, that was great. Thanks a lot. There's a lot of information packed in there. I did forward that PowerPoint and also the current district needs statement just now to the committee. The transportation section starts on page 27 of the DNS. So for folks that want to refer to that, and like I said at the beginning, like, you know, we're not here to do the district needs session in the next 15 minutes. This is a very it's going to be a labor intensive process for the committee, and it'll be on the agenda for the next few meetings to kind of like dig down and get you the information that you need, Gina, to
come to the meetings. I'm willing to invite me and I'll come because it's very valuable. I felt a little bit like when we got done, there's so much. I mean, there's the park and open space there. So if we can just look at just transportation and come to a meeting and do that, that'll be great. So that we can look at parks and we can really work without coming down to just our one meeting where there's a lot of material to look at. So yes, I will come to the transportation meetings.
Thank you, Gina. Committee, any questions or comments? And again, like I said, this is just a kind of a how it works section.
Eric, I have a question.
Who's that?
It's Aaron Drinkwater.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Do we have examples of what district needs we've submitted in the past that have actually been funded?
Yes. I mean, yes, we do. I would have to review them, but
because I think it just might, as you know, a newer member, it might be helpful to see what's been funded in the past.
Okay, but that's a good question. I'll review. I'll research that. But I believe we do.
Hey,
thanks, Gina.
Can I speak? This is Brian. I would love to answer the question a little. One of the reasons why I've been bugging Eric to do this is I was having a conversation with Ben Solitaire, and he was saying in the city budget process in the council's office, they constantly referred to the district needs statement, and the statement, it was what helped them win budget battles and get things for the district. And so I, at the time, was like, wow, I don't even think we really, like, I was like, I didn't realize it was so important for the city council person.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ryan.
It's good to know. Yes, because I saw that Lincoln Wrestler responded that he received the district needs statement, and they were working with it. I mean, he was good to. I saw that response.
So can I ask a question, Eric?
Go, Will. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that Paul?
Paul, yeah.
Yeah,
So
go ahead, Paul.
So if it sounds like it's kind of going to be on the agenda for the next few months, so like what is the format going to be like? I mean, should we each be generating a list of things we'd like to see included, and how do we propose that and come to agreement about what the priorities are?
Can I suggest that maybe at our next meeting, we set up a timeline of how we would take input and like put together a schedule? Like we now know what the Gina gave us the overall timeline. I feel like we can all research and sit with that information, and like at the next meeting, set the goals for ourselves so that we then have the next month to work, blah, blah.
Yes, I think that's best, Ryan. And I think we've talked about that before. So Paul, bring a list at the next meeting, and we'll start digging into it.
Eric, I have a question.
Is that Kevin? Go ahead.
And maybe Rhonda or Gina could answer this. Should we be thinking about projects that the city has never heard of before? Should we be looking at like more capital or expense needs? Capital being like infrastructure projects versus expense being like more like the SIP projects we heard about earlier. I'm not exactly sure.
That's a good question. Well, Gina or Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we'd be looking at both capital and expense projects, no?
Oh, yes, both capital and expense projects. And what I can do is for the next meeting is I will review, because I will review the agency response and responses to the district needs 2023 statements. Because what I was looking at is some of them were like, wait, they said. I have to take another look, but it didn't look good.
I'm shocked if they would say to wait.
It's good, but we don't have the funding right now. So anyway, I will bring that in, and we could look at that, because I was trying to, look at it.
And if I could clarify my earlier question, do you know for existing projects, should we be like saying, hey, where's the follow-up on it, and almost using this as an accountability measure?
Yes.
Or is that okay?
Yes, I would say that. And that's what we did last year. I mean, we were like, a lot of the projects were like, we don't have the funding.
Mm-hmm.
We're like denied. And we said, why? And we said, no, we have to keep them on the list and advocacy work. But advocacy work is not that easy, but for every group has to be an advocate. That's why I believe that every committee has to work on advocating for their district needs.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, for this, I'm going to limit this to committee only on this item, just because it was just informational. As Ryan said, and I agree with, we will take this up at the next meeting to set some goals and to have a more discussion on detail. And so, Gina, again, thank you very much for making the time and doing the presentation. Folks, look over the presentation that was sent around, as well as the district needs statement for transportation, starting on page 27. And we'll take this up again next month.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Gina.
I enjoyed the meeting. It's very good.
Okay, I appreciate you coming.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay. It is 8:54. And we are approaching item number 5, which is old business. Rhonda, I believe, had something for old business. Well, I'm sorry. Committee first. Anybody? Committee first. Old business.
I mean, you know me, the BQE Wythe exit.
Right. Okay. We'll talk offline and coordinate that with Simon and some other folks, and DOT and state DOT. Okay. Hearing no other. Rhonda.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. So Kyle Gorman, who's been the liaison for the Open Streets program, he had an announcement to make, but he had to be at another meeting, and he asked me to read this for him. DOT is excited to announce that on Saturday, May 14th, from noon to 4 p.m., DOT will host a design workshop as the agency continues to embark on public engagement and design development for a project to upgrade the Berry Open Street with public space improvements and traffic calming measures. The project will reflect a number of considerations based on feedback we've heard from the community, including adding new bike and pedestrian infrastructure, commercial loading zones, accessibility, and maintaining emergency vehicle access. The workshop will be held outdoors on Berry Open Street, exact location to be determined, and we will share a flyer for you to promote the design workshop soon. I'm happy to also forward this to you, perhaps in the morning if you need to include it in your notes. And then there's
Yes, Rhonda,
also,
if you could email that to me, that'd be great.
and there's an email address specifically that goes directly to the Open Streets program if anyone has any questions about that. Normally I would write it into the chat, but you don't have that. You want me to give that that email address?
Sure, go ahead.
Sure. So it's openstreets@dot.nyc.gov.
Say that one more time, please.
openstreets@dot.nyc.gov.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and just email me that statement. I'll include it in the record for the report.
Sure, I'll do that.
Okay. Any other old business going once, twice? Okay, new business.
Eric, sorry, Eric, my hand was up. I just had a quick question about Meeker, if I could.
Okay.
I promise I'll keep it short. Rhonda, do we know when construction will be starting on, I guess, on Meeker again for the spring, and also for Collier Triangle? Do we have any type of date set for either of those spaces?
I don't have that information off the top of my head. I do know that the Collier Triangle construction, I believe, is imminent. I'm gonna need to follow up with that information.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay, new business committee. Community board members. Ms. McKeever, baby. Trina. I see her there. Maybe she buzzed out. Any other committee members have new business? I could bring it up, but I think Trina is deep in it, so it'd be better for her to.
Do you want me to bring it up? They're here
Yeah,
to
go.
ask. I I feel like they were here to ask Rhonda about DOT enforcement of the open restaurant program.
Yeah.
Or ask DOT.
Yeah. So it's specific to.
Trina's back.
Oh, good. Okay, Trina. Trina, you're recognized if you want to go ahead. I see her struggling with the mute. All right, until Trina can get in. So yeah, just on at the end of the at the full board meeting, it came up. Well, not at the end. I guess it came up during liquor licenses.
During the public session.
Public session, yeah. So or the board meeting. Regarding the taqueria, specifically the taqueria on Oak, which does not have a liquor license. And Trina, you there?
Now I'm here.
Okay, you're breaking up a little bit, but I'll recognize you. Go ahead. Susan?
Oh, hello. Street address for the business.
Oh, there we go. Okay, Trina, go ahead.
Can you hear me, you guys? I don't know if you can hear me.
If everybody can mute, that might help.
You know, Eric, I'm in a moving car in a place with bad connection. Maybe one of my neighbors can talk on my behalf.
Gotcha. Okay, Susan, do you want to go?
Sure. Thank you very much for recognizing.
Sure.
Go
ahead.
So, what Trina was going to speak to is the situation involving Taqueria Rivera, which is located at the corner of Franklin Street and Oak Street. They have applied for a open street structure on under 94 Franklin Street, which is the official address of the restaurant. However, we being the neighbors, believe that the application is misleading because they are taking the approval by the DOT to allow them to actually build a structure on Oak Street. As you know, Franklin is a pretty big street. It's got wide sidewalks. There are a number of open restaurant structures already on Franklin. Oak, on the other hand, is very small. Where they're looking to build it also has 2 tree beds. The space between their property line and the tree bed is barely 4 feet. They may even brush the branches of the tree were they to build it there, but it definitely does not meet the criteria that the DOT has set of a minimum 8 feet space for passageways. And in fact, they have pretty much taken over the sidewalk with the unpermitted use with portable benches, as it were. The neighbors have been, trying to work with them for the past 8 months. It's only gotten worse, and it seems to have gotten to a point now where they just moved ahead to try and build a structure on Oak Street. So we beg the community board and the DOT if they could look into this before they actually try and erect a structure, which they tried to do last Friday, so that it doesn't turn into a situation where it's like, whoops, we really did mean it for it to be approved for 94 Franklin. I mean, as they had, applied for. And there's a structure on Oak Street. Does that pretty much sum it up, Trina? And I know that I also have others on the call from Oak Street, and if they might chime in as well, I'll appreciate it.
That's the meat of it as I understand it, Susan, but I'll entertain a couple other Oak Street. And just to be clear, you're the Oak Street Block Association, yes?
I am not the Oaks. I am a member of Oak Street. The two co-heads of the Oak Street Block Association are Trina and Alyssa Alberti.
Right.
However, I'm one of the near neighbors, and Maggie, who is on the call, is actually lives right next to the restaurant. There are many other issues as well involving that restaurant, but for purposes of the DOT and the Transportation Committee, these are the pertinent points.
Right. Yeah. I just want to keep it to the restaurant shed.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Can I respond to some of that, or
go ahead, Rhonda.
You
Go
don't
ahead.
hold off?
Go ahead.
So I'm pretty I haven't visited the location, but I have looked at it on Google Maps, and I spoke to the police, and I spoke also to the restaurant, and I've got numerous emails from I guess some people that are the neighbors on Oak Street, and I spoke to the inspectors who inspect the open restaurant structures, and from everything that I understand, that certainly their mailing address is 94 Franklin Street, but there's nothing that precludes them from putting a structure on the street in front of their frontage if it meets the criteria. And certainly the parking regulations there are alternate side street parking regulations, so they are able to put a structure, they're permitted to put a structure there. And as I'm a little confused, the tree beds are up against the curb, right? So that having the structure or not having the structure wouldn't impact the clearance between the tree bed and the front of the restaurant?
It's not so much as the tree bed itself. It's just that there's only 4 feet between the tree bed and the restaurant.
And right,
And
so
there-
having a structure in the street would have no impact on that either way.
They also are using the sidewalk right now, even though they're not permitted for it. And my understanding from looking at the DOT website is that in order to have one of the requirements for a street structure is to have ADA compliant premises, which they don't.
Well, I think that the structure has to be ADA compliant. I don't think we get involved with the interior
No,
of their
bathroom.
restaurant.
It says bathrooms. In fact, that's
Rhonda, this is Trina. I don't know. I think I've got more bars right now. The restaurant opened after COVID, during COVID. So they knew it wasn't like there was hardship on the restaurant. The owner chose to build out in what had been a coffee shop. It's really tiny. And the thinking of the neighbors is he did that knowing that he could expand on the street. And is it really fair for a restaurant owner to buy what is in essence a tiny restaurant where you can fit 6 or 7 people comfortably at tables and spread it out onto the street on a quiet residential street that is totally disrupted by the noise and the volume of people on the sidewalk that'll only be multiplied when you put a shed that's 3 times the size of the restaurant into the street. It just seems really inappropriate.
Yeah, I understand that the neighbors aren't happy about it, but as long as it meets our criteria, then we have to let them do it. I mean, the issues of noise, that's an enforcement issue with NYPD.
But the street address, the building that they're in is 3 times the size of what is the restaurant. And the shed that they're going to put will be the length of the building. which basically will triple the size. I mean, it just doesn't seem right that because if a restaurant takes up a tiny fraction of a building, that the shed can run the length of the building.
I don't know if they can do that. I know that they can put up the shed in the street for their frontage.
Frontage of the restaurant itself.
So I know that they can put up the structure for the frontage of the restaurant. And then as to if they can expand beyond the frontage of the restaurant, with the permission of the landlord of the building.
Well, he's renting the building. I mean, he's renting the ground floor, the owner of the restaurant.
So if I could just finish my sentence, because I
Sure,
certainly heard, you guys out. I was saying that I was asked that question by the owner today, if he can expand in front of the residential unit that's adjacent to his restaurant. And yes, I know he lives in that residential unit, but, and he also says that he has the permission of the landlord. I am looking into that. I don't have an answer, but I know that he can put the structure for the width of his frontage for sure.
And Rhonda, what about the 2 tree beds? Because they are very close to the street. If you were to erect a structure, it'll come very close. And wouldn't that also violate park regulations?
I just a point of information. So at the one of the shops I work at on Havemeyer, they have a restaurant shed and an additional seating area, which they did get permission from the landlord to put in. And
you mean
the
beyond their
shed,
frontage?
Yes, but they got permission. They wanted, so if you're looking at it, they wanted the space to the right, which is a barber shop, and they said no. And they're not the landlord, they're the tenant, but they said no, and then they couldn't get approval from the landlord. But then they asked the landlord of the property next, and they got that approval. And there are tree beds right up against the shed. Now, in terms of ADA, so that is not an issue in terms of the way the restaurant shed criteria is currently operating. Not to say that it won't change, but it does have to be ADA compliant because we had to buy ramps
To access the sidewalk shed. I mean, the street.
Yes, so originally it was just in the roadbed, and we just had planters blocking out a section with no roof. So we could only serve on nice days, but we had to have a ramp from the street bed up to the curb. And then when we built the proper shed, it was at curb level, so there's you could roll a wheelchair or walker or whatever, you can roll it right into the shed. So just as
the ADA compliance comes, if that
right,
the
so that's
shed
just a
has
point
to be accessible.
Right, that's just a point of clarification. Now, I mean, I feel like, so DOT has their rule, and we've been inspected like 15 times. So the inspectors are out there, making us do all these like different tweaks and fixes, which we're always happy to do, of course. But it feels like with the council, making these permanent, it's a legislative fix. Because I don't know, that's my sense, is that it needs to be addressed by the electeds, to kind of rein in this what is clearly, based on what I'm hearing about Taqueria, is just it's just a grab for for space that they're just exactly right. They have a 6-stool spot that should be a grab a taco and walk out and walk down the block or whatever, and they're deciding to make a restaurant because they can, because right now we're in this like
nebulous.
Yeah, it's like it's yeah, we're caught in a purgatory of like an emergency plan that needs to be codified better in the law so that the agencies actually can have teeth to like rein in some of these. Some of them are saving businesses, like they saved our business, like I'm not even gonna have that argument. But like Trina said, they opened during the pandemic, and then they were like, oh, we can have a restaurant in the street, and all of a sudden we've like increased our square footage by 300 square feet. It's ridiculous.
That might be true, but I feel like I'm not in a position to. That really has no bearing here. I understand what you're saying, but it doesn't have any bearing on them being allowed to do what they're allowed to do within the criteria that's been laid out. I mean, there is no criteria that they had to exist before the pandemic started. I'm sorry, Eric. All of a sudden you're muted.
Sorry. I know it's kind of lost in the way that the regulations are written right now, but if the storefront is 94 Franklin, and Franklin is a business corridor, it should be on 94.
Storefront is on Oak Street. There is no frontage on Franklin.
Yeah, see, that's I mean, they should have put in. I don't know. It's. I feel like it's like one of those gray areas where they're just like, gaming the system to like get this thing in there. And Rhonda, you can only tell us what the regulations are. So I'm not really coming for you on this. Just so we're clear, I'm just venting.
Well, I do want to say though, in response, anecdotally, if you may, that
Sure.
there are restaurants that are on corners, right? So obviously their address is on one street or the other, not both, and yet they're permitted to have structures on both sides.
I think that's crazy too.
Okay.
I think that's
Eric,
insane too.
Maggie, who lives right next door, has been trying to talk. Do you think you could call on?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
And are you Maggie Murray, just for the
I'm,
record? Or
I'm Maggie McInerney actually, but my husband is Murray.
and can you
I
just spell it? Is that
actually-
Meggie?
It's
MEG?
Neggie, and then my last name is MCINERNEY. I actually spoke at the community board meeting, and just would like to layer on a few things. I think what Eric was saying is exactly right. The capacity indoors of the taqueria only seats a maximum of 18 people. That's what they put in their plans for the neighborhood. And 5 of people inside are actually working in the taqueria. Previously, we had a cute little coffee shop, and I think there was maybe on a busy day a maximum of 5 people inside. One of the challenges that we're facing is that they do not have enough seating for people who come to the restaurant, and actually they do not offer takeout. That's written on their Instagram and publicly shared. And so what's happening is they are having crowds line up. Some nights there's 30 to 50 people outside, line up. They only serve on plastic plates, so everyone is required to eat on the street, on the sidewalk. They are blocking the sidewalk. They do not have a permit for a sidewalk cafe, but have been putting out benches. So the entire sidewalk is completely blocked. And I think our concern is that right now, if you are handicapped, if you are a mother with a stroller, as am I, if you are walking your dogs, there is just no way to cut through the crowds. And then I do believe that our assumption is that they opened this storefront, and it is a little misleading that they're actually building out an outdoor structure to create a larger capacity when inside that's just not something that they have. If I would be allowed, I have a few photos just to express what I'm sharing so you guys can see how this sidewalk is blocked. And then I also just would like to add that in addition to renting the commercial space, they also rent the apartment in front and the garages next to my house. So it's a pretty large, piece of property on Oak Street. And I think one of our challenges as well is that they are now, without a certificate of occupancy or permits, building out the garage to be additional restaurant space. And I think one of the fears of the neighbors is that this outdoor structure is really going to take over our quiet residential street, given that they're illegally building out the garage. But if I would be permitted, I'd love to share some photos just to kind of show what is going on currently.
I think for the interest of time, if you want to email those to the board office, and I'll make it part of the record. But we're already 20 minutes past our out time, so I hear that. I appreciate that. I think the garage issue that was brought up in the full board meeting, that's a Department of Health thing, because if I'm understanding that they're prepping in there, that is not illegal use of that space, which is different agency altogether. I do want to make this an item for discussion in the transportation committee, but it's so wrought with like raw emotion, and we've had enough emotional topics over the last 2 years that my brain is kind of fried with it. But since it's not really DCA anymore, it's not SLA. Now the question is, these benches that they're putting out, it used to be that if you put out a bench without a DCA license for a sidewalk cafe, you were fined, you were busted, or you had to like take your stuff down. That, as far as I understand, and I think Tom Burrows is who chairs the SLA committee, is just as flummoxed as I am with this. It's kind of like Wild West with like these, and we're coming out of pandemic and there were all these emergency business, blah 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 blah. But now we got to rein this in. Like, it's got to be codified in a way. And if it's going to fall to transportation, then we're going to have to take it up and make recommendations and really push our electeds to create a balance for neighbors. So, Trina, I think you wanted to draft a letter to. I think we should draft it to the mayor, the borough president, and the DOT, and to our electeds. But I'll give it to you, because I think this was your idea.
And Eric, I might speak in that benches were always a deal. The Department of Transportation is called revocable consent. Sidewalk cafes, that was DCA. That's now DOT. So everything we're talking about is DOT now. Thank you.
Right. That's right. Yes, it was revocable consent for the benches. But if you just threw out benches and like DOT didn't sign off on it, you were in trouble. Right. So anyway, thank you, William, for that clarification. And Trina, go.
So Eric, could your committee could your committee ask the community board write a letter on behalf of the residents of Oak Street about the situation that's going on with the taqueria, and we could fill you in. My phone's about to die and I'm about to go into a bad zone, so I can't.
Okay.
I can't give you all the specifics, but it's basically everything that we've just talked about, everything that Maggie's just said and Susan has just said. And I could follow up in the next day or two with an email that our group has put together, and maybe you could run by for clarification with your committee. Can we do something like that where we don't have the specifics and it gets presented to the board?
Eric, I would like time to go and see the spot, or see, like, I just feel like I don't want to vote on a letter without checking it out or hearing from the business person. It makes me slightly, I don't know. Can we
I mean, that's fair. I have seen the spot and it is problematic. I'm over there on Franklin. I was there today.
Food is great, and the guy
the food is
seems to
great.
be okay. And when we had the leverage of a liquor license, he agreed to a lot of
Right.
stipulations that
That's
the
that's
block
an
had
important point.
asked. And
Right.
and then once he didn't go for his liquor license, he was friendly for a while, and then it just has grown and grown. And now with the better weather, it's out of hand again, and the better weather has only just begun. And so
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned about waiting. I don't know if the board can, Ryan, I understand what you're saying, and for your committee to vote on it without the specific letter, without hearing both sides, I get that. But I wonder if there's a way that the board could consider it
How-
in the May
how
meeting
about-
so
how
that
about-
we don't let another month go.
Okay, how about this?
Oh.
Jerry?
Hi, this is Kevin.
Kevin, go ahead.
Can I just say I think that as a committee, we should be doing our best to connect individuals with the resources that they need to make their opinions known, and that we should be encouraging everyone who's affected on Oak Street to reach out to their elected officials. But I don't really know if a community board letter is really appropriate in this circumstance. I think that there's a lot of rulemaking and a lot of valid concerns in terms of exceeding capacity, but I think that is something that individuals should be raising to their elected officials, and to Ryan's point, like we haven't seen the like actual circumstance like on the ground. Like we don't have anything to work off of right now, and I think it would be premature, if not completely out of scope, for us to be writing a letter in support or contrary to, just because people don't like a restaurant on their street. If they're within their legal right to do that, then they should be able to do that, even though there are some concerns that have been brought up that are very valid. I don't know, it's lots of feels, but I think that right now, as the rules are written, it's within their right to be doing things, to be building out that space. As I think Rhonda has mentioned, there are restaurants throughout the city that are building out on both sides of the street, and if they're exceeding capacity, then we should be having DOT come in and enforce that. But I think that's really on individuals to go in and ask for that. Right?
Does the capacity of a shed have to relate to the capacity of the indoor space?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and as far as the indoor
Oh,
space,
no.
I mean, I don't think DOT has oversight over capacity on this.
They don't.
I think
If
that
anything,
would
it
be
would-
DOT has
Department of
oversight
Buildings.
on the capacity of the shed, right?
Unless it says it in the criteria, then we don't.
May I just,
No, actually, capacity of the shed it's the dimensions of the shed. So the dimensions of the shed limit your capacity as the operator.
may I just offer something here? There are so many issues relating to this operation beyond the DOT. There are valid concerns with regard to their DOB, actions with regard to the Department of Health. I mean, to the extent that, they're prepping and storing food unpermitted, mind you, in a garage. That could conceivably actually shut down the restaurant. So to allow them to build a shed to expand their operation fourfold seems like putting the cart before the horse. I mean, granted that committee members, have not come out to see the space or speak to the operators, but perhaps you could. In the meantime, while all of this is being put forward to our electeds, being put forward to the agencies, perhaps this agency could consider putting, just slowing down until these things get sorted through and the committee considers what is the best action, as opposed to allowing them to move forward, to build their shed, and then, the residences are faced with this situation by an operator that is violating so many other rules, that are even more significant.
Right. I mean, the reality, and Kevin, I respect your point, but the purpose of the board too is to take what the community brings us and then react to that, right? So, and SLA, I mean, like, I don't visit all the bars aren't even open yet that we're reviewing, but we have to torture the operators until we get the right responses to make sure that the people that live above that restaurant are not going to hear like crazy frat kids like throwing up on their car in the morning, so we are within our right to do this, I think. And Jerry, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Eric,
yeah,
I think the statement should be to make sure the Department of Health does their inspections in Department of Buildings. If they're doing all these activities.
Yes, but it's a transportation committee, so I want to keep it specific.
DOH and DOB have already been put on notice with this complaint.
No, but Eric, you understand something. The license they get to put these roll size is based on the Department of Health H-25 food establishment permit. If that permit is found to not to be valid, they lose the right to put outdoor dining. So that's what it works together. So
right. Okay. That's okay. Thank you, William. So
Eric, if I may just respond, I think that asking for further clarification on the rulemaking and helping, define what these rules are and establish, what actually is allowed and isn't allowed. I feel like that's what we should be focusing on rather than the specific restaurant, if that makes sense. Because I think in addition that we should be supporting community members and saying, hey, listen, like these rules are still in development and all of our elected officials and agencies are looking to hear input on how to make these rules better, how to make them more concrete, and how to make them apply to everyone. So I think that they'd be very willing to hear from individuals from the Block Association, but I don't know about us commenting on the specific restaurant would be in scope, but rather saying, hey, DOB, hey, DOT, we should be looking into circumstances like the one that has arisen when considering the rulemaking.
I mean, yes, but I mean, the best that we can do as a committee, which Jerry will tell you, we are advisory. And so, our power only rests in the ability of our electeds to, follow up on the things that we recommend by letters, or agencies to follow up, and citizens to, call their elected officials and say, do something about this item. So in terms of this letter, I think I respect your point, Kevin. I think I'm not saying go to Taqueria and like shut them down, because I don't want that to happen either. I want them to thrive and be a good business, but I also want them to be a good neighbor. And so, and I'm kind of putting on my SLA hat here too, because they did come to the SLA and look for a liquor license, and there was a long discussion. I mean, Tom Burrows can tell you. We can look back at the record. We did have a long discussion about about this spot, and then look, if they want to put out a little restaurant shed and it fits and it's I'm kind of okay with that. But if they're gonna like take up the whole block, I don't know. I think and the rule and Ryan, and the rule and the rules, the way they are written by the city right now, are not good. Right? So there's all these holes in the rules that have created this particular situation. And this is not to cast aspersions, like whatever. I mean, they're doing business. They're just trying to, do their business, which I understand. So I think the best that we can do is, if we want to write a letter to DOT, actually, if we only wrote the letter to DOT and not the mayor and whatever, because that's another issue that we can take up when I put this on the agenda for my sins to be tortured. But if what we'll do is write a letter to DOT asking them to review I guess I'm making a motion. Community Board 1 to draft a letter to Department of Transportation to review the application for Taqueria, what is it? Taqueria Rivera. And to ensure that they are in compliance with all, what would you say, William?
Ramirez.
Ramirez. Sorry.
Well, I just want to say is that could we ask the good neighbors to forward you some photos? That way you could have documentation.
Yeah, that's fine. But
Yeah.
I'm just trying to structure like what this letter should say as a motion. That's why I'm looking at you, William, because like you know the rules.
Well, the rules keep changing. We work
I
close with
know.
DOT, but basically, is the letter should be requesting that even though this is a Department of Transportation outdoor dining, that it's because the license for it is the food establishment number for the restaurant. So to make sure they're in compliance with these other agencies before they issue out the Department of Buildings, Department of Transportation's outdoor dining permit. Because there seems to be some issues regarding the build out of a kitchen, which is Department of Buildings, how they're prepping the food, Department of Health, so to make sure DOT makes sure that these operations, for example, make sure DOT, Department of Health inspects before DOT and Department of
So
Buildings.
wait, so we can't oversee all these other agencies, though. That I think that's not even realistic. I mean, who's going to do that?
Do we have quorum before we spend another 15 minutes on a motion?
Do we have quorum?
Rhonda, would the DOT consider holding off until at least some of these issues get sorted out? Because as you know, it is contingent on their, on the Department of Health's findings.
So just so you know, when they did their self-certification, which they did do, they need that number from the Department of Health, and they had to have had it or they couldn't have completed the certification. So they have that. So they have that.
But Rhonda, it is highly unlikely that the Department of Health would have signed off on it had they known that they were prepping food and storing food in the garage, which is not certified. They do not have a COO of it. They flat out lied to the precinct, to the police on Friday. They told them that they are actually, when they were asked about the curb cut, which now obviously if they're using those garages for purposes other than parking their cars, they said, oh, we are in the process of changing the CO. There's nothing on file with regard to that. So they flat out lied. We've caught them in so many lies. The DEP inspector was out there and found them guilty of dumping wastewater in the street. They lied to them. Oh, it's rainwater, when there was grease floating all over the top.
All I can tell you, Susan, I hear what you're saying, and you're just saying more of,
Right, but all I'm saying is,
I can't answer this. This is beyond my wheelhouse. Okay, I'm sorry. So I will bring this back, and I will talk to the borough commissioner about it.
All right, and in the meantime, could the agency just hold off on the approval? Well, I know you've already.
I could bring that back to my borough commissioner and discuss that with him. I don't have the authority to give you an answer to that question.
Okay.
Let me clarify something about the license. All it means is that they filed the application to get the H-25, they get the number. And that's all that's required of the Department of Transportation to do outdoor dining. It doesn't mean that they were already inspected and passed inspection. That's part of the process. So all it is you file it and you get the KMIS number, food establishment number, and that's all that's required for the Department of Transportation, as when I was working for city government. So it doesn't mean that they pass all the inspection Department buildings or Department of Health, or Fire Department, all these other agencies that regulate a food establishment. It just means they had filed it, and the Department of Health It's all by email, sends them, and they have the number, and that's the number they put in as their permit number. Doesn't mean they had an inspection or passed it.
And to
Well, that's
answer
how the
Ryan's question,
system's set up now, so
Yeah.
right.
I can't make the rules or break
No,
the rules.
Rhonda
amend the
has
rules.
no
I'm just-
control on that. That's something was set up by the mayor's office.
Right.
Period.
So to answer Ryan's question, we do not have a quorum. And A. And so so now I'm kind of conflicted. Like Kevin and Ryan make good points. But this particular operator, like if I hadn't been on SLA committee and if I didn't know like that happened, like whenever that was, like last spring or whatever, I'd be a little less sanguine about it. But and then that whole garage thing, I mean, I'm in food, like I'm in the food business, so like when I hear that they're like prepping in a garage, that makes me a little crazy, because like I want to go do it in my basement, where I have a lot of room to cook, and I'm not going to do that because there are rules. And so anyway, we don't have a quorum for a letter. It's a tough spot, because what Rhonda is saying is that according to the paperwork, and what William is verifying as well, is that they are in compliance regardless of, are they good neighbors, are they bad neighbors, is it a good taco, is it a bad taco, or like can I get my stroller through this crowd of people? I mean, I'm frustrated. I think it's something that maybe as the committee we can go forward and try to like rein it in. And the other thing too is, just so you know, even if we voted on a letter today, it wouldn't get voted on until May 10th, and then the letter wouldn't go out until later that week, and by that time that shed's going to be up. So that's just another thing. However, I noticed the other day on a restaurant just around the corner from me, DOB made them tear their shed down and rebuild it. So
DOB?
DOT. The shed wasn't in compliance. They didn't have the right safety stuff going on and whatever. They tore the whole thing down. They just rebuilt it with all the proper. They're working on it today. So
Eric, we have to be cautious, because this is I was just checking the internet. They got a large audience, and so whatever stuff we want to do, we make sure we're not on the wrong side, So it has to be thoughtful, whatever decisions we make.
Yeah, I mean, I know they have 1 million Twitter followers, and I don't really care.
The restaurant is wildly popular. That's the problem.
I mean, good for them that they make a great taco. I love a good taco, but like at the same time, don't be a jerk. Right. I could think of another.
I'm just saying,
another word.
If they are in compliance with the city laws as it is, the enforcement agencies that need to do their job. That's what it is.
Right. And a good example, and Trina, you'll remember, and probably some of the other folks, when Paulie G came before the SLA, and they were going to open up their garage in was it Milton Street? I can't remember now. I mean,
Noble Street.
Right. I mean, it was like a 30-minute conversation about Paulie G and whatever. But at the end of the day, Paulie G did the right thing, right?
Well, he also had a liquor license, so there was leverage.
True. That's
Here,
true.
there's no leverage. It's really the Wild West.
That's true. That's true. Anyway, so I mean, okay, we don't have quorum for a letter.
With all due respect, I think that where I stand and what I can do, and if you want to have go on and have a committee conversation about this, I don't think you need me here.
Yeah, I mean, Rhonda, you did say that you would take it back to the appropriate
Borough
department.
Commissioner Gray, yes.
Take it back to Keith. And if you could just, I think that's all we can do right now. Take it to Keith, have him respond to us you know, in a timely fashion. With
Right.
that's it. I mean, that's really all we could do. And then once we get that clarification, we could take it up. And I don't know. We're kind of stuck, to be honest.
Rhonda, would it be helpful if the Davers on Oak Street were to put together some information and some pictures to when you do bring the case to him, just so that you have some of the facts laid out that we've been talking about? I know you've been listening, so, but would it be helpful if we gave you a document of some sort?
I don't even want to suggest that, because you're going to send me all the stuff that are DOB issues and Department of Health issues. And
No, we could keep it in scope. We could keep it just to the shed.
well, so I already received
Okay, no, I get it. I know.
pictures from, I don't know who exactly, Iberti, right? That's her last name. I got emails from at least 2 or 3 different people with pictures and descriptions, and I shared that with the inspection team, and Keith is copied on all that. So it's not like I've been ignoring the material. I've responded to a lot, specifically last Friday. I was responding to a lot of these emails, and I wasn't making the answers up. I was going to the authorities within my agency. So, you know, I feel like you want an answer that I can't give you.
No, understood.
Does Rhonda, does the commissioner or the borough commissioner have any discretion on approvals of the sheds?
Not to my knowledge.
And-
We've just been faced with talking, interfacing with mostly restaurants, but also people that have complaints. We've been helping the restaurants, we've been helping the residents. I wind up talking to many, many people through this and talk about the rules and all. But the borough commissioner has not weighed in an opinion on whether something should be open, or not opened. That has been handled through, it's actually a division of HIQA, who does the construction enforcement. So they're actually the only, unit in DOT that has the ability to legally enforce, issue summonses.
Okay. Okay, so I think we're stuck, unfortunately, but
maybe you and I can talk some more tomorrow too.
Yeah, let's Paul.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know if this is helpful, but I just wanted to make the comment that even if we had quorum, I feel like I would be pretty uncomfortable voting on a letter right now, because I feel like there's just such a jumble of different issues. And maybe if, there was a presentation with photos and we could just kind of understand a little bit more, that would be helpful. But it's just unclear to me exactly, specifically what these guys are doing wrong. And I just wanted to make that point.
Thanks, Paul. Okay, so no letter, but Rhonda will follow up with Keith and inform the board. And then, this doesn't, just because we're not writing a letter does not mean this is over. We will take up the restaurant shed issue probably in the fall, I think, after we've seen what the summer looks like. And then they'll, hopefully the electeds will start asking, we'll start writing legislation that reins in good people that are bad actors, that are bad neighbors. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm just but we've been talking about this for an hour now, and we could talk about it for another hour.
Well, I think one distinction to make too is a residential street versus a commercial street,
Sure,
which we don't. I mean,
absolutely.
that's my last point tonight. And Eric will send you photos, or we'll send your committee photos, and we'll continue to put together information. Rhonda, we get it where the limits are with where the laws are and what you can do. But it would be great if you could take it to your chief and come back to us. And maybe we should all say goodnight, Eric. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I just want to point out one thing in response to what you said. There's no official designation as to what makes a commercial street and what makes a residential street. I'm not trying to open up a can of worms, but there's like no map that gives you official designation for that. So, you know, I've been asked that question before.
Which is also why the legislators have to like write legislation that makes that distinction. Because I mean, if you're on Oak or Guernsey or whatever, like, you know, and you drop a restaurant in the middle of that street, it's like a nightmare. You put it on Franklin, there's like 1 million restaurants on Franklin. I mean, you know, and Rhonda,
So maybe it's a land use issue.
Maybe it is. Anyway, we have to end this. But Rhonda, thank you so much for staying and discussing this. Kevin, I appreciate you. Paul, I appreciate you. And Trina and Maggie and Susan, thank you. I'm sorry, you know, we couldn't resolve this, but we will put it on future transportation committee agendas because it looks like it's coming our way to regulate anyway in some way or another, since SLA it doesn't deal with these issues anymore, and that we don't do DCA is not involved anymore. So we're gonna have to figure out a mechanism to you know, to get some code on this. So anyway, with that, I thank everybody for attending and sticking in out till 9:51. It's like the old days where we used to yell at each other till like the end of the night.
Good night.
All right, thanks, guys.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you, Eric.
Sure.